Thomas Paine, Thomas Paine, Thomas Paine, Sam Adams, Sam Adams, Sam Adams, Benjamin Franklin, Benjamin Franklin, Benjamin Franklin. These men spoke up for what they thought was right. From their courage came such documents as the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution of the United States. From their willingness to speak what was sometimes unpopular but right, we enjoy such liberties as freedom of speech, the right to keep and bear arms, and freedom of religion. There are those who still wish to oppress our freedoms, and there are still patriots willing to stand up and defend life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Men like Zeb Bell, who honor our founding fathers and what they stood for. It's now time for Zeb at the Ranch, speaking up and defending your freedoms. Brought to you by Magic Valley Les Schwab Tire Centers and all of the other great advertisers on the program. And now, Zeb Bell.
A social worker from a big city in Massachusetts recently transferred to the mountains of North Carolina and was on the first tour of her new territory when she came upon the tiniest little cabin she had ever seen in her life. Intrigued, she went up and knocked on the door. "Anybody home?" she asked. "Yep," came little Johnny's voice through the door. "Is your father there?" asked the social worker. "Pa? Nope. He left after Ma came in," said Johnny. "Well, is your mother there?" persisted the social worker. "Ma? No. She left after I got here," said Johnny. "But," protested the social worker, thinking that surely she will need to intervene in this situation, "are you never together as a family?" "Sure, but not here," said Johnny through the door. "This is the outhouse." Government workers are so very, very smart. Here comes Kate Smith, and God bless America. Good morning. Thank you very much, Kate Smith, on a Tuesday, October 1, 2013. I'm Zeb Bell on Zeb at the Ranch with our major sponsor, your Magic Valley Les Schwab Tire Centers, all 7 locations serving you. Great locations, nice people. And, of course, some of our great advertisers, including Lee's Furniture, Floors, and More at 459 Overland in Burley. And they're going to be giving away a painting, a beautiful wall-hanging painting. And that's our special gift to start off the month of October for Zeb's Cow Pies and Coffee Cups. So get your names in. And also we want to say thank you to Western Way Services, always at your disposal. Get on the route service today. Call them at 734-6969. Well, good morning, Gina Jameson.
Well, good morning, Mr. Zeb Bell.
Too bad about the old social worker from Massachusetts.
I love that one.
I figured you would.
Jack she'd ever seen in her life.
Yeah, and really it's amazing when you go back east and talk to some people that have never left the concrete of a city, they probably don't know what an old outhouse is.
And they probably never had to use a... Never mind.
No, that's true. That's very true. But all of us out here in country, we know what that wooden door is with that half moon or quarter moon on it.
And we always take in some extra newspaper.
That Sears Roebuck caddy log. Where's the caddy log, Ma?
Son, I think Daddy's the last page.
And without going too far into an area where some people wish we wouldn't tread, I can remember going up to my Aunt Archie, or my Uncle Archie and Aunt May's farm up in northern Wisconsin at Rhinelander. Very good deer hunting area. And they never had anything indoors as far as plumbing is concerned.
I've been at several locations like that in northern Idaho.
Yeah. And one...
You gotta do.
You do have to do what you have to do, when you have to do it, where you have to do it, and what's available.
Because you cannot put Mother Nature on hold.
No, sure that wood looks a little old and crusty and it's cold outside and everything else, but you just have to bear up. And I mean bear up in all the sense.
Good Tuesday morning, sir.
Do we? Well, now that we're not going to be on the air tomorrow,
Okay.
who do we have for a pledge this morning?
We've got Rotten on for the pledge, and Mr. Michael Rogers.
How fitting. Good morning, Rotten. Give us the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'll tell you what, I'm going to ask you a question. You can give me an honest answer. Remember the old outhouse?
Oh, well, how well.
A lot of fond memories, right?
I was about 15 before we ever had inside plumbing.
There you go, and you know all about that Sears Roebuck catalog, don't you?
Oh, yeah, and the J.C. Penney one, too.
Hey, God bless you, man. Thanks so much.
Okay.
Have a good day, sir. Thanks. Oh, my goodness sakes. It's amazing what we get to talk about on this program. And we're still on the air. Rock Creek Growers, corner of Maxine Lane and Irene Streets in Kimberly. Oh, my goodness, 40% off. 40% off on trees, shrubs, plants, and materials. My goodness, get in there and see Randy and Karen Anderson and their family. They've been in business since 1988, and they know all about the beautification of your property right there at Rock Creek Growers on the corner of Maxine Lane and Irene Streets in Kimberly. Really, really good folks. You stop in and see them today. Here's MichaelRogersWeather.com. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning. Our houses are really good in Alaska. You almost made me homesick. And going through what you had to go through, we just had to do the same thing at 20, 25 below.
Oh, my.
So it was, boy, that brought up some memories, I got to tell you. Good morning, everybody. You heard that rumor about, did you hear there was a tornado in Seattle? There was one. Yesterday, EF1 tornado did some damage to a few buildings, and it's coming from a storm that's heading our way. We will see that storm on Wednesday night. Now, relax. There's no tornadoes in the forecast when that rain gets here. But you know, as I always tell you, weather can't read. But for our forecast for today, not a bad day in the Magic Valley to start off the first day of October. It's going to be sunny, 71 for the high, 48 for the overnight low. I'm sitting in Jackpot right now. Got a beautiful sunrise. It was 32 degrees, nice and crisp, and a nice fall morning. The rain should be with us on Wednesday. Taper off on Wednesday night. We're looking right now for a pretty good weekend, but we got to get through it. So enjoy your day, enjoy your outhouse, and enjoy the weather. It's the only weather you got.
Oh, Michael, thank you very much. Brought to you by Michael Rogers Weather, brought to you by Rock Creek Growers on the corner of Maxine Lane and Irene Streets in Kimberly. Really great folks. Oh, boy, if you woke up this morning, I'm going to get right to it. The government is shut down. The government is closed. The government is on gridlock. We're going to talk about this extensively in the first hour and try to answer some of your questions if you have as to what's open, what's not open, what's available, what's not available, that type of thing. But, you know, I'm just going to say this. I believe, and there's going to be a lot of criticism weighed at me right now, I believe it's a good thing. I believe it's for the better. I think it's a wake-up call to America, if they have any common sense at all, they being the voting public and the perception of what the public thinks about this administration and how lax they have been at doing their job. Now, I don't want you to be like other audiences have been this morning on other talk shows, other venues of media. They're in New York, Chicago, and getting out of bed in L.A., people are blaming the GOP. They're damning and blaming the Republicans. But now let's just take a look at the situation here real quick. Who really is supposed to be in leadership capacity in this country? Yes, you're right, Barack Hussein Obama and his administration. And that's not working. This is a disaster if it goes much longer, but it was not caused by the GOP. And I'm going to get into some of this morning and also take my first call in just a moment. Caller, I ask your indulgence. Wait 60 seconds. I'll be right with you. Do not miss our friends at SafeLink High-Speed Internet. Now is the time to check out the all-new SafeLink. No contracts required, no credit checks, new high-speed Internet packages with no data limits, free professional installation, and I'm telling you what, all you have to do is call. They have wonderful people that will serve you at SafeLink SafeLink, high-speed internet, and call Shane, 677-8000. That number again, 677-8000. Also, don't forget to, all of my clothes go right straight to Daryl's Cleaners at 1223 Albion Avenue in Burley. They do the best job. Now, that's not bragging. That's a fact. They've been handling my clothes for a long, long time. All my shirts, all my Wranglers, all my sports jackets, everything. And Deanne's dresses, you name it. They take care of it, and they all come home looking brand spanking new. Daryl's Cleaners, 1223 Albion Avenue in Burley. Good morning, caller. You are on the air.
Good morning, Mr. Bell.
Yes, sir. I'm good, thank you.
Hey, I got just thinking a little about this Obama, and they're not negotiating with the GOP. But President Obama will negotiate with terrorists. And you ought to listen to Harry Reid and Nancy Pelosi because they're calling the Tea Party terrorists, so you probably ought to negotiate with them.
Well, no, you're not saying anything that hasn't been acknowledged, but a lot of people aren't listening. You're exactly right that he'll negotiate with terrorists. He'll talk to the president of Iran. He will do anything and everything to try to capitulate and bow down for our country. But he did nothing. Obama did nothing to avert this shutdown. Obama will do nothing because he is a very, very egotistical, very, very selfish person. At 9:06 this morning, I want you and everybody else to be listening to a piece that was sent to me by my good friend Dave Bego back in Indianapolis. And it was written by Maureen Scott. And Maureen is a political pundit that writes heavily about the government. Listen to what she wrote about Barack Hussein Obama, and I think you'll have a clearer understanding as to why we're getting from this man what we have received.
That's very true. He's not a leader.
Never was. Never could be.
Never was.
He's absolutely an amateur.
Area where corruption was the rule. Was the rule.
You know, whatever happened, let me ask you a question. Whatever happened to the word compromise? Whatever happened to sitting down both sides of the aisle and taking a jackknife and whittling out on a stick a compromise for the betterment of the American public? I've looked and studied at everything the Republicans have done and how they've been damned, how they and other members of the Republican and the Tea Party have been damned, and Harry Reid, that soft-spoken punk thug, stands up there and lays all the blame on them and will not do anything to talk about a compromise. I have no use for the Democratic Party. I've lost any and all, if I had any, respect for the Democratic Party. And as far as Obama is concerned, this should show a window, a mirror to the world as to how poor a leader he is.
Yeah, and the rest of the world's laughing at us. But we elected him the second time.
Yeah. Careful how you say we, Kemosabe.
Well, I didn't. I just vote for him.
God bless you, man. Thanks for your call.
You too.
We'll take some more calls in just a minute. 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. Caller, I'll be right with you. Don't forget Ramsey Heating and Electric at 2600 Overland Avenue in Burley. Number to call ahead for your order, and they'll have it all waiting for you on the counter for your cords, cord ends, fuses, all the equipment you need for power for your outfits during harvest. And hats off to farmers. I mean, go on in there, farmers. Throw that dirty old cap on the floor, get a brand new one, get some popcorn and pop. They salute agriculture at Ramsey Heating and Electric at 2600 Overland Avenue in Burley, where they always have warm winters and cool summers at Ramsey Heating and Electric. Good morning, caller. You're on the air.
Well, good morning, Zeb. First of all, when you have an old hat, it's like a friend, and it's hard to give them up.
That's right.
Wait.
That's right.
And it's true. You know that's true.
Well, I got to tell you real quick, Adrian, I've got, and this is not boasting, it's just because of the business I'm in, I've got probably at least 30 to 35 different Western-styled cowboy hats. And I've got one black one that I have had since I went to the first national finals I announced in 1982. And it is beat up, it is crusty, it's been dragged through the corral, it has plenty of recycled alfalfa on it, and it is absolutely my most favorite hat.
Well, absolutely. If you're in agriculture, you've got one hat that you just, if you're outdoors and doing things, you got one hat that you don't care if if it gets stomped on and gets a little recycled alfalfa or whatever, it's just part of you.
What's interesting about that hat, though, is I can wear it outside in the middle of the summertime, and the gnats and the bugs, they seem to leave me alone.
Well, maybe we better not comment about
that. Real quick, go ahead if you would, please.
Anyway, I think what's going to happen, when you see the attacks by Peter King and McCain and so forth on Ted Cruz and the Tea Party, you can bet the establishment elite inside the Republican Party is still going to do whatever they can to destroy the Tea Party faction in the Republican Party. So it's not only Harry Reid that's so despicable and our fearless leader, our leaderless leader. We've got some real problems with the neocons, whatever you want to call them, rhino types in the Republican Party that just are attacking Ted Cruz and the Tea Party people.
Yeah, well,
and I see MoveOn.org. I just got an email this morning from MoveOn from a conservative that sent me an email from MoveOn.org, and they're raising funds now to try to destroy the Tea Party. And does that surprise you?
Yeah, but listen, read this morning's paper and look at an editorial piece that was written by Albert Hunt, and he works for Bloomberg News. And I'm just going to read you the last paragraph, and I agree with him. I agree with this man. He's talking about Ted Cruz, and he said the 42-year-old may have put himself in a win-win situation. If Democrats cave and concede anything on Obamacare, Cruz will be hailed by party activists as the man who made it happen. If Republicans ultimately capitulate, the take-no-prisoners Texan can be expected to lead a chorus of criticism of his own party. I think Ted Cruz has really elevated himself to the point where he, and jealously admitted by other Republicans they don't like him that much because he's been so forthright, I think Ted Cruz is in a win-win situation, and I agree with Bloomberg News this morning.
Yeah, I just picked up the paper and I was reading that as you were quoting that. So, I had kind of missed that article. I hadn't read that part.
All right, I got to run and do a commercial break, Adrian, but I always appreciate your God-blessed answers and your questions and your statements. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Have a good
Thank
one.
you. I got
to vigilant to keep freedom.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. I want to remind everybody about Valley White Home and Ranch, and then we'll take some more calls. I know a lot of people want to talk about the shutdown, and I want to kind of give you my version on it, my take on it. Been up early this morning talking to people back east. Valley White Home and Ranch, as you know, they've got all your feed for all your livestock. And I'm not bragging, that's the truth. All your feed for all your livestock. And they've got a wonderful fishing section over there. I was over there the other day, as a matter of fact. And, of course, they've got and Steve gave me all this, the Smart Lick supplements. That's right, the Smart Lick Advantage helps increase forage utilization. Smart Lick is available with 12% to 40% protein. And for your cattle, they've got the Smart Lick NE22 and the NE30. Now, I'm telling you, cowboys and cattle, they've got what you need for your cattle, and they've got all the Smart Licks. So check it out today at Valley White Home and Ranch, 910 South Oneida in Rupert. They've got everything you need for the home farm and family and the ranch, and if they don't, they'll get it for you at Valley White Home and Ranch in Rupert. Calls are welcome and appreciated. 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. And real quick, I want to remind everybody, we welcome back to our program a sponsor that I've always had a lot of fun with, and that's Four Paws, 370 West 200 South of Rupert, 438-4444, 4444. I love that number. Kathy and the crew over there, they say if you're finding extra hairballs around the house, did you know that your dogs shed their summer coats and then there are hairballs laying all over the place? Well, bring them into Four Paws and get them de-shed. One has to articulate. And cleaned up before the cold sets in. Book an appointment for October and save $5 to $10 off grooming. And don't forget their big Halloween happenings. The Halloween party, Saturday, October 26th. That's right there at Four Paws Bed and Bath. It's going to be great. Free pictures with your pet, refreshments, costume contest for your pets at Four Paws. A lot of fun people over there. All right, give me a call, 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. Out-of-control spending is one of the issues that needs to be discussed. This administration, with a deficit buildup and getting more money on a credit card that they want to raise higher and higher and higher, Obama wants to raise the deficit ceiling and the debt ceiling. It could go to easily over $20 trillion in debt by 2016. Think about that. 2016, over $20 trillion in debt. Because this man wants to spend, spend, spend. And I think all of this is a great culmination of fighting back with what weapons they have in the GOP. Not only now for the shutdown of government, but also on October 17th, that's the deadline for the debt ceiling. And I think all this coming together is a good thing. Caller, good morning. You're on the air.
Yeah, good morning, Zeb.
Yes, sir.
About what Ted Cruz did, I totally agree with him. A lot of people are in fear of this guy, but people are listening what he had to say.
Well, let me ask you a question, Tony. I'm so sick of the boorishness of Bill O'Reilly and others that condemned him, that condemned Ted Cruz, and they said, oh, he's just nothing but a runaway speaker that's just touting and shouting everything for his benefit. No, he stuck his neck on the line when he had that filibuster. He stuck his neck out knowing it could end his political career. And Peter King from New York and others of the Republican Party that damned him, and they did, I think they're going to be eating dust as he runs away and takes over the leadership of the Republican Party. And I absolutely think he's in a win-win situation because he showed that he was going to stand up for his constituents. What's your thought?
Well, first of all, I'm really disappointed in Peter King. I heard what he had said. There's a lot of people like you and I who agree with Ted Cruz because he is a common sense guy. He sees what's going on, and there's a lot of us out here that will totally support this guy, and he totally did the right thing.
Well, isn't it time? Isn't it time, Tony, that somebody in politics said, I'm not concerned about my reelection, I'm not concerned about my benefit program, I'm not concerned about just getting back here and kind of laying around the Potomac with the good old boys. I'm here to represent my constituents. Isn't it a good thing for a change?
Yeah, when I first heard the guy, I said, "Boy, here's somebody that's got common sense, and there's going to be a lot of flack over it, and I'm glad it flopped. He did the right thing."
Well, I can't agree more, and I'm willing to argue with anybody on this situation. Some of the old staunch Republicans, which I think should be put out to pasture, John McCain, Lindsey Graham, and others, tough, shape up or ship out. Start representing your constituents or get out of Dodge City.
Well, these guys have been in office too long, and it's time for them to go, and they know it, and they're going to hang on as long as they can. I
got a whole bunch of commercials. I'm way late, Tony, because I talk too much. I got to run.
Okay, thank you, Zeb.
Hey, thank you, buddy. I appreciate it. Ladies and gentlemen, Travel Lube Supply. Oh, my goodness sakes. Yes, sir. You stop in or give them a call. Travel Lube Supply. They've got all the Bubba ropes, and they can get you unstuck if you're stuck in the field. You got to have a Bubba rope. And don't forget to shop towels. They got a box of 200 for only $15. Actually, $14.99. I saved you a penny. And they got window wash for all the trucks, and they got grease guns and grease. They got it all for you at Travel Lube Supply, 1050 West, 203 South of Hayburn. Number to call, Jim McCall and the rest of his great crew, 438-8730. Holy buckets. It's time for the Capital Press Ag Minute, brought to you by our friends at Pacific Steel and Recycling, 320 West Main in Burley. Here now, the Ag Minute.
Today's Ag Minute brought to you by the Capital Press, the West Ag Weekly.
An exotic fly that attacks a wide variety of fruit appears to have moved from Washington State and Oregon into southwestern Idaho. The number of spotted-winged Drosophila caught in traps in Idaho has increased significantly over the past 2 weeks, raising concern among fruit producers around the region. Small numbers of the flies were detected in Idaho in August of 2012, but state officials had been hoping they wouldn't survive the winter. The insects were first detected in the mainland United States in 2008 in California and were reported for the first time in Oregon and Washington the following year. With the Capital Press Ag Minute, this is Hannah Brous.
For more agriculture news and information, turn to the West Ag Weekly, the Capital Press, and capitalpress.com.
Don't forget our friends at Pacific Steel and Recycling is 100% employee-owned. Has been for over 25 years. And they want to remind you, too, that National Recycling Day is coming up in November. We're going to have a great big to-do about that right here on this program. Stay tuned for lots of specials and free prizes and giveaways with our friends that serve you, Pacific Steel and Recycling, 320 West Main in Burley, 678-2321. Also, I want to remind everybody, we want more phone calls. I'd like to hear your opinion and your questions regarding the government shutdown. Are you concerned? Are you scared? Are you absolutely quaking and shaking this morning? Oh, our government is shut down. Why? We're going to heck in a handbasket. Not really true. We probably won't feel anything. We'll talk about that. Give me a call. Don't forget Rain for Rent at 134 South, 600 West Highway 27 in Paul. Number to call, 438-5065. And they, of course, have the Rainke Pivot sales and service with top-notch professionals. Hello, Frank Jensen, for all your industrial needs. Skip Hilton, Brooks West, they know. They know. Give them a call, 438-5065. And by the way, don't forget they're going to have a drawing for a 40-inch flat-screen TV, and that's going to be on October 21st. You bet, with great Rainke rebates for the fall on your irrigation needs. Rain for Rent. In Paul, you stop in and see them today. Also, real quick, I want to remind you, too, Scott Gano of Gano Landscaping and Sprinkler Service, 150 South, 950 West of Paul. The water's being shut off, and that means you better get on the list to have Scott Gano and his crew blow out your sprinklers before they freeze and really do some damage, and then you're standing there crying and cursing and everything. Don't do that. And if you're thinking about putting in a new sprinkler system or revamping your old one, always call Scott Gano. He knows. He put in one from my arena. Absolutely excellent. 431-8733. Scott Gano, Landscaping and Sprinkler Service in Paul. All right, now, give me some calls and we'll talk more about this morning, please. Caller, good morning. You're on the air.
Good morning, Outhouse Special.
Easy, buckwheat.
Hey, I watched that fiasco last night until it closed. I have never seen in my life so many rotten liars in my life as I've seen.
Now, wait a minute. When you say
Harry Reid,
when you say liars, though, let's be more definitive before you mention names or anything. What kind of lies were being perpetrated last night?
Okay, Mary Landrieu come right out and said that the Democrats had done everything they could to get things going. It was Republicans holding up things.
And that is a lie.
Yeah, that's what I said. Because who put three propositions in front of that Harry Reid yesterday, and they threw them back in their face?
Yeah, and
Republicans did.
Yeah, and let's hold it a second, Al. Let's also mention that the Republicans and the members of the Senate were ready to go back into duty on Sunday afternoon, but Harry Reid sat there and said, "No, I'm going to watch football, and we're not going to show up or reconvene until Monday at 2:00.
No, Harry Reid went to a wedding for his same-sex marriage people.
Oh, I didn't even want to go there. I was trying to clean it up with a football game.
Don't hide nothing. But anyway, I just don't get it, because I always thought that you wasn't allowed to hold a government office or public office if you was convicted felon, right?
That is supposedly the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah. As long as you're a Democrat like A.C. Hastings, it's okay.
Yeah.
He's a convicted felon sitting on the House of Representatives. That's the kind of crap's going on. That's why nothing's getting done. And I'll tell you what, it's time to clean house.
Yeah, but let's talk a little bit about what's going on today. A lot of people are concerned that the sky is falling. You'll still get your mail. The veterans, and I will say this, our Army soldiers that are right now in active duty will still get their paychecks. Obama lied about a lot of this. As a matter of fact, Pete Hegseth has been on this program. You saw him on Fox News. You've seen him on other stations. Pete Hegseth with Concerned Veterans for America came out this morning, and he was mad. He was on television this morning at 4:45 our time, and he said that Obama lied when he said that active duty will not be paid because of the shutdown. That's not true, and the VA is open. I want to just tell that to everybody.
Yeah, and Social Security, we'll still get our check.
Yes.
He might be a little slow. What the hell? That's
Yes.
the government. That's all it has been.
But by the way, stop. You brought up an excellent point, Al. Thank you. Emphatically, the question was asked, will seniors continue to get Social Security benefits? Absolutely yes. And there were people yesterday in the Democratic Party that were saying seniors would be absolutely without food, heat, or anything because of no money. See, there again, you're 100% right, the lies that were perpetrated.
That's right. And every time that I hear that, I want to just crawl through the screen, take that guy with the, like you say, necktie, until his nose turns red and his eyes pop out.
Well, there's so much that is absolute misinformation. As a matter of fact, you know who Stuart Varney is?
Yeah.
Okay. He was on the news this morning early, and he said, no, wait a minute, people, don't think that this is going to be crash and disaster time at the markets. Because he said the foreign markets actually opened up stronger, and there was a prediction that our markets would open up steady to strong by at least 50 to 100 points this morning by noon. So really, Al, where's all the doom and gloom?
I don't know, because the only things they're shutting down is really not all that important, like the national monuments and all that stuff. That's fine. That'll help save them. But what they ought to do is cut down on Mr. Obama's flights for these unnecessary golf trips and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah, but now wait a minute. One of the questions that was asked is, will the president be paid during the shutdown? The answer is yes. The president's $400,000 salary is mandatory spending.
He owes the American people a refund on everything he's done.
Amen. Hey, by the way, how's Polly?
Hey, we got everything taken out of her arms and that. She's doing great, and she's running around here raising hell with me.
Well, if she isn't wired up, buddy, it's time that you head for the outside. She'll nail you. Look out.
I don't have an outhouse.
Okay, see you later, buddy. Oh, God bless. Polly, good to hear you're feeling better. Calls are welcome, 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. Have you had an accident? Have you had a fender bender? You need something done as far as body work on your pickup, your car? Let me tell you, and I mean this is a heartfelt testimonial, that Middlecoff Ford Lincoln Body Shop in Twin Falls, wow. That's it. Wow. They're good. They did a phenomenal job for me and my pickup. And as you know, earlier this summer, we had a devastating fire in my pickup and also my horse trailer. And I got to tell you, Middlecoff Ford Lincoln Body Shop did a tremendous job for me. They are iCar certified, only shop in the Twin Falls area like that. And they know and they care. I really, honestly, even through all the turmoil, I really enjoyed working with them. You will too. Give them a call. Tell them I told you to call. 736-2490. Middlecoff Ford Lincoln Body Shop, 1243 Blue Lakes Boulevard North in Twin Falls. Honestly, really, really good people. All right, give me a call, 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. I mentioned earlier this morning, and I want to hit this again, that Thursday we will have our first drawing for our first winner of the readers of my blog, my weekly newsletter, Cow Pies and Coffee Cups. If you have not yet signed up, you still have time. The drawing is not going to take place until Thursday morning, and our first drawing is going to be for a beautiful, beautiful painting valued at almost $400 from Lee's Furniture, Floors and More at 459 Overland and Burley. Thank you, Brent Lee and staff. And that's going to be our first drawing this week on Thursday. So please get your names in. We've got some amazing prizes, especially the grand prize. Don't miss it, okay? Right here on Zeb at the Ranch. All right, give me a call, 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. What are your fears? Do you have questions, honestly, about the shutdown? Will I still get my mail? Yes. The U.S. Postal Service functions as an independent business unit. Not well, and not very thrifty, but it still functions as a private unit, and you'll get your mail. Let's see. Could government agencies ignore the shutdown? Under a federal law known as the Anti-Deficiency Act, it can be a felony to spend taxpayer money without an appropriation from Congress. Gee, something new. They've done it a long time anyway. Let's see what else. Will the government continue to pay unemployment benefits? Yes. The Employment and Training Administration will continue to provide essential functions as occurred during the shutdown of 1995, according to the Department of Labor Contingency Plan. And for those of you that are worried about food stamps, will you be able to get food stamps? Yes. The Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, better known as SNAP, is funded through the Recovery Act and from funds that do not expire for another year, according to the United States Department of Agriculture. Okay? What about camping in national parks during the shutdown? They're going to be closed, but campers already in the parks will be given 2 days to leave. Okay, that's another question that came up. If you have any questions, give us a call. I honestly, and I'll say this again like I said at the beginning of this hour, I don't think it's as bad as what you think it will be. I certainly don't think it's the end of the world like the Democrats are perpetrating. I do think that this might turn out to be a good thing, because when it comes to out-of-control spending, when it comes to raising the debt ceiling, when it comes to absolutely the Democrats' arrogant attitude of, you got to go through us, baby, we're not going to capitulate, we're not going to work with you, we're not going to do anything, their attitude is going to hurt them. It's going to hurt them a lot more than the Republicans. And I say to the Republicans, thank goodness you finally found a spine. Calls are welcome, 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. Give me a call. I'd like to hear what you have to say about it, so give us a jingle. Don't forget the Ambulatory Surgery Center. This is a wonderful, wonderful center at 1344 Highland Avenue in Burley. For over 14 years, the Ambulatory Surgery Center of Burley has saved area families thousands of dollars as they have received outstanding medical care. This is first-class medical facility located at 1344 Highland Avenue in Burley. The number to call, 677-8888. And they are one of our proud sponsors of Cassia County School Days, heard right here on Thursdays at 10 minutes after 10. Thank you very much. Your turn. Give me a call, 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. Okay, Obamacare is a sticking point, a real sticking point. The exchanges go into effect today. I mean, there's all kinds of things going on. Thousands and thousands of questions. People are just on all sorts of electronic media asking, do I need to do this? What do I do here? It is a chaotic mess. Obamacare is, and I dare somebody to tell me I'm wrong on this, a chaotic mess. I am trying right now this morning to find a number as to where I can personally approach a lady by the name of Betsy McCaughey, and she is the former lieutenant governor of New York State, and she has written a book called Beating Obamacare. And I am desperately going to do my best after this program to get her online, hopefully by tomorrow morning, if her schedule permits. She was on news broadcast early this morning, and she has taken the 2,900 pages of Obamacare, this lady, and has read every single page, has highlighted every single page, has made personal notes on every single page, and of all the people in this country, even more so than the Democrats or even the people that have helped write the doggone stupid bill, she knows more about it and what it will do, won't do, and what it can't do or might do than anybody else in the country. And we're going to try to get her on the program because all the questions, she said that right now this morning, over 51% of America, 51% of America has no clue. They don't know what to do. They don't know what they're supposed to do. They don't know what kind of questions and possibility of problems hang in the balance. And she said that you need to prove coverage by January 1st or you're going to start being fined. And she said a lot of people are going, what do I do? What do I do? Where do I go? Who do I talk to? Well, we're going to try to do our best to get her on this program and not discuss all 2,900 pages of this idiotic bill, but basically the basics. So I'm going to do my best to get her on this program. The Republicans wanted, and here's something that needs to be said, and we're going to go to the weather with Michael Rogers here in just a minute, and I'm not trying to turn this into a partisan deal, because each party has a lot of doo-doo on their side of the aisle. But the Republicans were trying to take off that special exemption for Congress. They wanted to have that taken out of Obamacare so that they didn't act like the hierarchy and the elitists to the American public on their health care. But you know who wouldn't take it out of there? Obama. He said, no. You bring that to me, and I'll deny it. It's going to leave it the way it is. Harry Reid, with his attitude towards this bill and some of the exclusions that they're getting in Congress, you would think the man would show a little class and say, okay, you know what? We're no better than our constituents. Let's take that out. Well, he damned the Republicans and called them bullies. So let's be real careful about who we blame for the shutdown and also for Obamacare. We're going to have the weather right now, brought to you by Sportsman's Warehouse at 1940 Bridgeview Boulevard in Twin Falls. I can just see, before I get into this commercial, I'm sorry, I got to break it off here. I can just see the local Democratic Party. They are gnashing their teeth. They're sitting off in little corners of coffee shops right now with sunglasses on and maybe wigs and false mustaches because they don't want anybody to know them, and that's just the women. But I can see them sitting there trying to figure out how they're going to combat all the social ills that they have perpetrated and supported. Shame on them. Now back to my commercial. Sportsman's Warehouse, 1940 Bridgeview Boulevard in Twin Falls with Reese Widmeyer. Oh my goodness, they've got everything for you. I mean, hey, if you're going hunting, why go anywhere else or try to piecemeal things together? Just go there. They've got everything that you need. I mean, everything for the hunting, everything for fishing, everything for archery, everything for everything you're doing. All the ATV stuff is there. I mean, everything. When I want something, that's where I go. I love going there. They've got friendly experts, quality gear, down-home attitude at Sportsman's Warehouse, 1940 Bridgeview Boulevard in Twin Falls. Here now is Michael Rogers Weather.
Hello, everyone. Michael Rogers from MichaelRogersWeather.com. For today, it's going to be rather quiet. Nice and sunny, 71 for the high, 40 for the overnight low. Then that storm that Seattle got, although there are no tornadoes forecasted when it gets to us, we're going to see that on Wednesday night going into Thursday, coming out on Friday. Have a great day. Enjoy the weather. What you got.
Thank you, Michael. Sportsman's Warehouse bringing you the weather this hour at 1940 Bridgeview Boulevard in Twin Falls. You stop in and see them today. All right, give me a call, 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. Morning, caller. How are you?
Well, good morning, Mr. Bell. How are you this morning?
Well, actually, I got to be honest with you, Donna. I'm not doom and glooming it this morning. I feel kind of good because of what happened.
Well, that's me. Our illustrious president is such a fool. He's trying to strong-arm everybody, saying that he's the supreme ruler. He couldn't rule a kindergarten class, let alone a country.
I've said for a long time that Barack Hussein Obama couldn't organize a one-horse parade.
No, sir. And, the fact of the matter is, I am certainly proud of John Boehner for the first time in a very, very long time.
I never thought I would say that.
I did not either, but you know what? He grew some overnight, and he's standing up for what his constituents are telling him. And I was watching Fox News this morning, and you're supposed to go online to enroll in this ridiculous health care.
Yeah.
It's not even up and running. What the heck is with that?
Well, there is so much that's hitting the American public right now. Here we are. We've got problems overseas. We've got problems with Iran and Syria. We've got absolute problems with the United Nations. We've got problems with our economy. We've got problems with our education system, with the Common Core. We've got all kinds of problems. Then you throw in the mix that we've got Obamacare starting up, and nobody, you know something? I could have every single expert on on the program, I don't care if it's from Washington, D.C., clear to Sacramento, California, and nobody really knows the answers to this 2,900-page mess.
Well, they don't have any answers, and because half of them have not even read it yet.
That's true.
That's why, when Pelosi in her big mouth said we need to pass this and then read it later, oh, how stupid is that? And then right on the very next sentence, government employees, House and Congress are exempt from this. That's baloney.
There are so many people, Donna, and I don't know if you and George are one of those groups, but there are so many people that are absolutely sitting back this morning going, I don't know who to call, I don't know what to ask, I don't know what kind of coverage we have or don't have, I don't know about the fines, I don't know about January 1st, I don't know. People are absolutely questioning as to where they're going to be.
Well, yeah, we're like most Americans are. We do have insurance. And that's always been a given. But it's like, why are they telling me that my coverage I got a letter, a package from Blue Cross telling me that my coverage, my policy may not be enough to satisfy Obamacare. Mm-hmm. Well, is he going to pay the difference?
Well, like I said, I'm going to have people on this program every single day talking about this issue and what you need to be aware of and what might come up. So bear with me. I'll do the best I can to get it explained. But be real careful.
Stand up. People need to stand up and say, okay, you know what? Enough is enough, jackass.
Yeah, and be real careful, though, of people that come on any program and say they have all the answers, because I think they're lying buffoons.
They do not. Nobody has the answers, and that's one of the biggest problems.
That's right. Hey, Donna, thank you much. Appreciate it.
You betcha. Have a good day, my friend.
All right. Hey, listen, don't forget our major sponsor, your Magic Valley Les Schwab Tire Centers. Oh, my. What a big tire sale going on right now. I mean, a big tire sale. Don't wait. You've been telling your wife, and she's been telling you, the car needs new tires. Well, stop in today. They've got the passenger car tire, the Ultra Z900 on sale, 30-day ride guarantee. Excellent tire. And for your pickups and SUVs, they've got the Wildcat AT2 on sale and the Terramax on sale. My goodness, all the tires. They've got custom wheels on sale. They've got absolutely the best in brake service, shocks and struts. I almost choked to death, pardon me. And like I said, the best in brake service to your vehicles, and of course the best in batteries, but also the best in people. That's right. They've got Dave on Blue Lakes and Twin, Mike and Buell, Mike and Jerome, the Twist family in Paul, Lane and Rupert, John on Poline in Twin Falls, and the old Seahawk fan Randy on Overland and Burley. Your Magic Valley Les Schwab Tire Centers. You want to hear something that absolutely will scare you right into the corner, and you'll be looking out of one eye going, the sky is falling, the sky is falling. Jesse Ventura, former governor of Minnesota, former boa-wearing fake wrestler, Jesse Ventura, is thinking about running for president. Yep, I'm not making this up. And you'll never believe who he's thinking about asking to be his running mate. Howard Stern. Say a prayer for America. Good morning, caller. You're on the air.
Yeah, I sure would. Hey, it tickles the devil out of me that went in shutdown. It shows some backbone, the Republican Party.
I agree with you, my friend.
It really does. It tickles me. Set that little feller back in his heels.
Well, Fred, I don't think the American public understands it's not going to be as harmful as they think it is. I mean, the Democrats are painting the picture that Granny's going to be pushed into a closet and somebody's going to lock the door.
Yeah, it isn't going to be that serious. We've been there before. We'll come out of it.
Absolutely.
Probably a lot better off than we are right now.
The thing that might happen Fred, is that it might be a wake-up call, even though I don't think Obama's smart enough to have that wake-up call, but it might be a wake-up call to the American public to say, wait a minute, what about the president? Why didn't he step in and make sure that this didn't go to the 11th hour and then everybody turned into a pumpkin? Why didn't he do a little bit of work with the Republicans and try to ensure that everybody came out all right on this thing? I think the fingers are going to be pointed at the Democrats very negatively. What are your thoughts?
That's my thoughts exactly, because they'll see how hard-headed he is. He wants to be the dictator that he has tried to be.
Yeah.
And it isn't going to work. Thanks to finally the Republicans getting some backbone.
Amen.
Showing him who is really in charge.
Amen. Hey, man, God bless you. It's good to talk to you, and thanks for stopping in the other day, Fred. Appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
Enjoyed it.
Thank you, sir. Occasionally on the program, you will hear this noise. And when you hear that noise, do not be alarmed. Do not think it's anything in your radio that's starting to blow up. Do not think anything dangerous or negative. It is me killing flies. And I mean that. I have never been besieged by flies in my studio like this before. Now, I do live in an agricultural area. We do have horses and cattle, and quite frankly, they are attracted to barnyard fecal material and recycled alfalfa. So they have a tendency to be around our location. They came in the house and they have taken up residence, and I have started to deplete their membership and their family, and I'm doing the best I can. So if you hear that splat, maybe I got another one. At 9:06 this morning, we are going to give you that reading by Maureen Scott. It's excellent. I think you'll enjoy it. I know you'll enjoy it because it really is the truth about Barack Hussein Obama. What else have we got? 9:30 this morning. Former liberal, saw the light, 80-year-old Michael Novak. He's an author. He's been involved in many administrations over the years. Great writer. We're going to have him on the air at 9:30, so don't go away. Zeb at the Ranch. I'll be back in 6. Oh, wow. Here we go. Hour number 2 on October 1. And the government shutdown is in full swing. However, we've been talking about that first hour, and I'm going to have something for you this half hour I think you'll find very interesting. It's called The Architect of Destruction, and it was written by a political pundit and American patriot, and believe me, she writes a lot of political commentaries, Maureen Scott. Now, I'm going to read that to you in just a few minutes, so stand by. We are brought to you by, as you know, our major sponsor, your Magic Valley Les Schwab Tire Centers, all 7 great locations, along with our great advertisers, including Lee's Furniture, Floors, and More at 459 Overland in Burley. Thank you, Brent, for donating a beautiful painting that we're going to have a drawing for on Thursday for our Cow Pies and Coffee Cups winner. And there's another fly that has to die. Hold on a second. Got to get him right here. Bingo! Got him. And don't forget to our friends at Western Way Services.
From the canyons of the Snake River and all across southern Idaho, we're always at your disposal. Western Way Services, we care about our community, our resources, and this great land. Western Way Services is lending a hand, always at your disposal. Western Way Services.
I want to talk a little bit about the route service today because absolutely we have been so happy with their great service. Every week, right on time, their big truck pulls up, boom, picks up the garbage. It's gone. It's out of there. Absolutely phenomenal service. You check it out today. Call them at 734-6969. All the porta potties, all the dumpsters, and, of course, the route service, always at your disposal. Western Waste Services, 734-6969. And, ladies and gentlemen, also, last Thursday at Lunch Bunch, we were blessed with a presence, and I mean that, of a very, very nice man and one of his children, and that was Joel Heward. And he is the owner, manager, and operator of Hanson Mortuary at 710 6th Street in Rupert. The number to call, 436-5636. And their staff is always committed to uphold the highest ethical standards with unquestioned integrity of serving you and your family during a very, very trying time when there's the passing of a loved one. Well, just remember, they are there to serve you. And the number to call, 436-5636. Hanson Mortuary, 710 6th Street in Rupert. Very nice people. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I want to tell you that right now we are going to start that reading by Maureen Scott. So hang on just a minute, and as soon as it's over, I really would appreciate some of your comments. And before we go any further, too, I want to remind you that tomorrow, on Wednesday at 9:30, we are going to have the first program for our friends at Skow's CarQuest Centers. Auto and truck parts, Skow's in Rupert, Heyburn, and Burley since 1949, all the Skow's CarQuest Centers. Well, let me tell you something. Jeff Poole is going to be the answer man. He's going to give you a lot of answers to a lot of pertinent driving questions, especially this time of the year. So be listening tomorrow at 9:30. Call in if you have a question for him on the air. I've had already many questions emailed and faxed to me, so it's going to be very interesting. Tomorrow at 9:30, our Skow's CarQuest Auto and Truck Parts Show with Jeff Poole. Going to be really a lot of fun. All right, let's get right into this. This is an article that was sent to me by my dear friend Dave Bego. And Dave, of course, back in Indianapolis, Indiana, has been on our program many, many times. And it was written by Maureen Scott in regards to Barack Hussein Obama. And, boy, if I can get rid of some of these flies that are circulating right around the microphone. I've got one that just absolutely wants to take up residence here. Barack Obama appears to be a tormented man, filled with resentment, anger, and disdain for anyone of an opinion or view other than his. He acts in the most hateful, spiteful, malevolent, vindictive ways in order to manipulate and maintain power and control over others. Perhaps because, as a child, he grew up harboring and abiding a bitterness toward the United States that was instilled in him by his family and mentors. It seems to have never left him. It is not the color of his skin that is a problem in America. Rather, it is the blackness that fills his soul and the hollowness in his heart where there should be abiding pride and love for this country. Think. Please think. Have we ever heard Obama speak lovingly of the United States or its people, with deep appreciation and genuine respect for our history, our customs, our sufferings, and our blessings? Has he ever revealed that, like most patriotic Americans, he gets goosebumps when a band plays the Star-Spangled Banner, or that he sheds a tear when he hears a beautiful rendition of America the Beautiful? Does his heart burst with pride when millions of American flags wave on a national holiday, or someone plays taps on a trumpet? Has he ever shared the admiration of the military, as we, as lovers of those who keep us feel freedom is very important, when our experiences or our values are threatened? He did not sit at the knee of a grandfather or uncle who showed us his medals and told us about the bravery of his fellow troops as they tramped through foreign lands to keep us free. He didn't have grandparents who told stories of suffering and then coming to America penniless and the opportunities they had for building a business and a life for their children. Away from this country as a young child, Obama didn't delight in being part of America and its greatness. He wasn't singing our patriotic songs in kindergarten, or standing on the roadside for a holiday parade, or eating a hot dog, or lighting sparklers around a campfire on 4th of July as fireworks exploded overhead, or placing flags on the gravesites of fallen and beloved American heroes. Rather, he was separated from all these experiences and doesn't really understand us and what it means to be an American. He is void of the basic emotions that most feel regarding this country and insensitive to the instinctive pride we have in our national heritage. His opinions were formed by those who either envied us or wanted him to devalue the United States and the traditions and patriotism that unites us. He has never given a speech that is filled with calm, reassuring, complimentary, heartfelt statements about all the people in the United States, or one that inspires us to be better and grateful and proud that in a short time our country became a leader and a protector of many. Quite the contrary. His speeches always degenerate into mocking, ridiculing tirades as he faults our achievements, as well as any critics or opposition for the sake of a laugh or to bolster his ego. He uses his office to threaten and create fear, while demeaning and degrading any American who opposes his policies and actions. A secure leader who has noble self-esteem and not false confidence refrains from showing such dread of critics and displaying a cocky, haughty attitude. Mostly his time seems to be spent causing dissension, unrest, and anxiety among the people of America, rather than uniting us, even though he was presented to us as the great uniter. He creates chaos for the sake of keeping people separated, envious, aggrieved, and ready to argue. Under his leadership, Americans have been kept on edge rather than in a state of comfort and security. He incites people to be aggressive toward and disrespectful of those of differing opinions. And through such behavior, Obama has lowered the standards for self-control and mature restraint to the level of street-fighting gangs when he should be raising the bar for people to strive toward becoming more considerate, tolerant, self-disciplined, self-sustaining, and self-assured. Not a day goes by that he is not attempting to defy our laws, remove our rights, override established procedures, install controversial appointees, enact divisive mandates, and assert a dictatorial form of power. Never has there been a leader of this great land who used such tactics to harm and hurt the people of this country. Never have we had a president who spoke with a caustic, evil tongue against the citizenry rather than present himself as a soothing, calming, and trustworthy force. Never in this country have we experienced how much stress one man can cause a nation of people on a daily basis. Obama has promoted the degeneration of peace, civility, and quality of cooperation between us. He thrives on tearing us down rather than building us up. He is the architect of the decline of America and the epitome of a demagogue. Maureen Scott, a lady that, in my opinion, has hit the nail on the head. And I'm so glad to have been sent that political piece that she wrote just recently. God bless Maureen Scott. Your thoughts on that? Give me a call, 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. While I'm waiting for your call, I also want to remind you about our dear friends at Cameron and Siemens Insurance. Whether it's life insurance, health insurance, retirement planning, employee benefits, doesn't make any difference what you need for coverage and security. They can help you. Please get a hold of Dean and Todd today at 436-4424. 436-4424. Cameron and Siemens Insurance, Highway 24 in Rupert, serving you. Also, our friends at Burley Glass. Gentle Ben, how are you? Burley Glass, my goodness, with the atrium windows, and they can help increase the energy efficiency of your home 2 to 3 times. It's that time of the year, folks. You better not be wasting any more time, and make sure that you have that energy efficiency with the best of windows. Burley Glass working hard to provide great service to all the communities in Magic Valley. Call them and get a bid today, 678-1459. Burley Glass, 1029 Overland Avenue in Burley. What are your thoughts about that piece, about what Maureen Scott had written about America? There was one sentence in there, one phrase that really hit me harder than anything else that she wrote about. And I'll read it again. It is not the color of his skin that is a problem in America. Rather, it is the blackness that fills his soul and the hollowness in his heart where there should be abiding pride and love for this country. That tells it all. That tells it all. This is a man that we know very little about. This is a man that really never did grow up in this country to, like she says, enjoy the 4th of July or try to eat a piece of apple pie with ice cream melting all over it. I mean, we don't know very much about this man, but what we do know is very disconcerting. Good morning, you're on the air.
That was such an excellent piece. I just, I need to put it up on my bulletin board. But you see, this kind of thing is so true, but so under-publicized because we have so many, like a guest of yours said yesterday, useful idiots. And I just don't know if they've thought down the road far enough to realize what this kind of, intentions will create for us as a country. I just can't imagine how anybody can be so delusional to believe any of this stuff.
The thing that gets me, Randy, is that when I was reading this on the air, I was struck with the fact that this lady put a lot of time and effort into just studying Barack Obama, into just listening and watching him and learning about his body language. And she knew everything about this man, and in a very short piece had a compilation of what this man is and what he represents. But again, I'll revert back to that one sentence: the blackness that fills his soul and the hollowness in his heart where there should be abiding pride and love for his country. That sums up all that we are lacking in this president.
Well, let me tell you something. As I talk, and I do it every day wherever I go with people, I talk to them about how they feel about where their country is. And only once in the last 5 years have I heard somebody actually be prejudiced about him being half black. The rest of it was just literally scared to death and very angry about what he is doing to the fabric of this country.
Absolutely. I can't wait for 2016. I can't wait to see this man leave the office. I can't wait to see him just take that last step out the door and close it of the Oval Office. Honestly, I'm very afraid for what's going to follow him, and I certainly hope it's not going to be the road to socialism and negativity like many have predicted. But this man has done more, I think, to create a distrust and an unrest in this country and a division. I don't know if it can be healed.
Well, that's exactly right. When a guy, Doug Pickett said to me the other day, he goes, a country that is in debt at 100% of gross domestic product will never recover. In history, it's never been done. And he says, that's where we are. And see, those types of thoughts that cause us to think that there is no hope, it's something that I can't believe, because as I drive down the freeway right now and I look at all these people that are out here working and driving and being productive and capitalism is in their DNA, they do not believe that. So I got to believe that
there is always hope.
I agree with that. Randy, God bless you for your thoughts as always, man. Thank you very much. I'd like to hear some other people's point of view on this. We still have time. I'm going to keep this, and I'm going to redo it and record it again for a future playback on this program. I feel that strongly. And then I thought I will also get a hold of Maureen Scott, and she's retired in, I believe, Richmond, Virginia. And we're going to try to get a hold of her, thanks to my dear friend Dave Beagle back in Indianapolis, and try to have her on the program live and direct to discuss the writing of the Architect of Destruction, Barack Obama. Your thoughts and your calls appreciated. Let's not forget our friends at Lee's Furniture, Floors, and More. And you know they've got the Smart Strand carpet. You know how tough that Smart Strand carpet is. You know that they gave me a great big 10 by 12 piece of that carpet. Caller, I'll be right with you, to put out in one of my corrals from one of my horses to live on. And then they came by about 3 weeks later, cleaned it. You could not tell it from the roll pieces of carpet, the real new ones, right there at the store. You couldn't tell. It's so tough. Lifetime stain resistance, lifetime anti-static, 25 years abrasive wear, 15 years texture retention. It's the best. You need it for your home. Smart Strand carpet from Lee's Furniture, Floors, and More, 459 Overland in Burley. Good morning, caller. You're on the air.
Good morning.
Hi, Lorna. How are you? And by the way, thank you for your kindness and that gift you gave me the other day. I owe you an apology. I did not call you. I'm very poor sometimes at returning calls. I want to thank you for that.
Well, you're very welcome. This lady, it's like she saw things through our eyes.
I agree with that.
All the things that, I mean, isn't this the best way that you've ever heard our feelings expressed?
She summed up everything that I have been thinking and everything that I've read from the various books and the stories and the supposed truths about Obama, and she summed it all up in a 3-page dissertation that is absolutely the best I have ever read. It was a compilation of all the things I've worried about and all the things I am concerned about.
Right. Well, I hope in some possible way things are going to change, and they're going to be able to do something productive from this.
This negative this morning, Lorna, of a political shutdown of our government, and then in 17 days looking ahead to the debt ceiling crisis, we have some pluses, some positives that really can help the American people right here if it's handled correctly. I mean, we can stop this runaway spending. We can stop this incessant wanting to go over $16-17 trillion in debt and possibly go to $20 trillion. We can stop this attitude in this country, and now's an opportunity, but people have to stand tough and have to stand firm.
Well, I certainly hope that they will stick together. I mean, I was so shocked when Boehner did not cave in.
Yeah, I agree.
This is the very first time that he has not caved in.
I agree with you, and finally, I think a little light bulb went on in the Republicans' mind that said, you know something? This is an opportunity for us to work for our constituents and show them that we are worthy, and I hope they keep that attitude.
Oh, I do too. And I hope they work over the Obamacare and get something that will help the people of this country.
Amen. God bless you, Lorna. Thank you for being a dear friend. We appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Have a great day.
Thank you so much. Nice lady right there. I really appreciate all of our friends and all of our people that go to Lunch Bunch and everything. But what are your thoughts about the Architect of Destruction? It's so well written. And then she says, never, in very emphatic terms, has there been a leader of this great land who used such tactics to harm and hurt the people of this country. How true. But again, that one phrase, the blackness that fills his soul and the hollowness in his heart where there should be abiding pride and love for this country. I wonder if Michelle Obama has read this. I wonder how many vases, mirrors, or whatever she has smashed after she read it. But remember when she said after her husband had been elected, this is the first time she felt pride in America? That really bothered me. That was a telltale description as to how aloof this husband and this wife were in taking over the leadership of this country. And don't you think for a moment that Michelle doesn't have a lot of control over a lot of items and a lot of people. She does. And it just leads one to have a hollow feeling as to where their heart is, where their feelings and passion are for this great United States of America. I really question that. I think you should too. Calls are welcome and appreciated. 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. Let's not forget Let's Ride, where the fun is sold. Highway 24 between Rupert and Burley, open Tuesdays through Saturdays. They're getting every day the brand new snowmobiles for 2014 coming in, and they've got all the 2014 ATVs in stock. What a great service and parts department. Man, these guys are great out there. You got to stop in and see them. Let's Ride, that is where the fun is sold. That's it, plain and simple. Where you can get the fun is at Let's Ride. Highway 24 between Rupert and Burley. You stop in and see them today. Good morning, caller. You're on the air.
Good morning, Zeb. In light of what this woman said you're reading, yeah, you're right what you've been saying. And things like these countries that are run by these dictators and they put fear in their people and such, that's what he and his administration are doing. Isn't that called terrorism?
Yeah, you can definitely give it that definition. I feel, of course, you know I don't like Barack Obama. I never have. I have had no use for his ideology. I don't like his past. I don't like his principles. I guess, what else can I say? And automatically, someone on the left, some Democrat in the audience right now this morning is going to say, well, you're a racist. You don't like him because he's black. Well, never once during that dissertation did you hear anything said by me regarding color or his race. I don't like the man's leftist socialist views. And I think, yes, you're right 100% that it is a form of terrorism in people being afraid as to what's going to happen every day when they get out of bed. They have no fear. They have no security, like we have had in the past, of knowing where this country's headed and what kind of progress we can make. Because right now, I don't know about you, lady, but I am scared to death for my grandkids going into a world that lacks leadership.
Oh, me too. And one other little quick thing is there's some little guy parks a red truck on the streets of Burley, and he's got all these signs against different things. I used to kind of chuckle as I went by. But now, you know what? He's got impeached Obama and stuff on there. I don't chuckle anymore. Some very wise person in my life, my son, said, you know what, Mom? At least he's standing up for what he believes in.
I totally agree, and I just had a little wreck here on the program. I just tipped my glass of water over on my computer and everything. This isn't good, is it? Thank you for your call. Deanne, if you would bring them up, thank you very much. We have a slight problem here. Thank you very much, and I've got a guest waiting, and I also have a kind of a lake. New Murtaugh Lake is found on my desk right now, and we're going to have our next guest get on the program momentarily, so stand by. Want to remind you, thanks to all of our friends at Perkins, of course, and Perkins Restaurant and Bakery, located at 800 North Overland in Burley. Perkins, where they believe in being the best buds with your taste buds. Absolutely a phenomenal lunch bunch last Thursday. We want to thank John and the whole crew over there at Perkins. Stop in anytime for breakfast, lunch, and or dinner, where you're really going to enjoy the food and the great service at Perkins Restaurant in Burley. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, I'm very honored to have a gentleman on my program that is an author and, quite frankly, has lived the life, walked the talk, and done everything. And this segment is called The Political Transformation of Michael Novak, and he has a brand new book out called Writing from Left to Right. I can't wait to talk to a former liberal that's now turned into a conservative. God bless him. Good morning, Mr. Novak. How are you?
How are you, Zeb?
I am fantastic. I guess the immediate question that's looming on my forehead right now is, Why did you finally see the light and leave liberalism and come over to us good old boys that are conservatives?
Well, it was a long, slow process. I wish I could say I was knocked off a horse at Damascus like St. Paul, but it took some years. And it was just an accumulation of little cuts. First of all, although I did my best to be sympathetic to the California radicals when I was teaching at Stanford, that great university with wonderful, wonderful students, I just couldn't quite do it, and I just couldn't stand when they spelled America with a K.
Mm-hmm.
America had been so good to my family, which came here dirt poor just before 1900. But I just couldn't stand it. Then things didn't work very well. I supported the poverty program, the war on poverty, and it worked very well with seniors, I think. I think the position of seniors by the end of the 60s was a lot better than the campaigners had found it when they were campaigning around the country in the beginning 1960. Remember how shocked Jack Kennedy was by some of the rural poverty he ran into.
Mm-hmm.
And but young people had their lives just terrifically disrupted by the war on poverty. Youth crime increased like 600% in just a few years. Families, just with higher and higher velocity, stopped forming. It isn't that they broke up. It's that they had children and never had the benefit of marriage.
Mm-hmm.
So, that it didn't work very well with the young. And that hurt a lot.
Mr. Novak, let me ask you a question right there, and if anybody I respect, I've read the cheat sheets on your life and your background, and I'm very well impressed, but I want to ask you this question. Why do you think America in general, left the attitude of the Saturday Evening Post with the Norman Rockwell paintings of us going to church on Sunday and the family sitting down together at Thanksgiving? Why did we accept the mantra of the left? Why did we change?
Part of it was that the generation that went through the Depression and then World War II just did their darndest to make sure their children's lives were better, and moved out to the suburbs and where it was peaceful and safe, and in a word, I think coddled our children.
Mm-hmm.
Stopped demanding nearly as much of them as we had to do, although God knows life for youngsters in that period was not real easy either. But I think there just came a whole softening, a whole transformation. Abraham Lincoln talked about what he called the silent artillery of time. No matter how heroic and how much suffering the generation can go through, each generation following can't quite get to that mark. Occasionally they can, but in general what happens is the next generation is a little bit intimidated by their parents and can't quite conceive of themselves as being so brave.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next generation after that, the grandchildren, get a little bit tired of talking about them, and they go off in a different way to prove themselves in a different area. I think that was happening all over in the 1960s.
Mr. Novak, do you believe...
Just as the war had made millions of people, the Depression, and then the war had made millions of people more religious,
mm-hmm.
more aware of how finite and weak they were, and how much they depended on blessings. That started to fade with prosperity.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the normal course of events in history. So I think background things like that had a lot to do with it.
In all the years of your writing and looking and watching and learning and speaking about where America is or where it might end up, do you think, sir, that we might be in a cyclical pattern and there is a chance and an opportunity that we can regain some of the value system that we've thrown down in the garbage?
Oh, absolutely. I'm not sure we will, but we can. America has had three great awakenings. The first led to the strength to take on the greatest army and navy in the world, Great Britain. And without an army of our own or even a munitions factory on this side of the water, we went to war for our independence.
And then there was a second Great Awakening following independence, as many people predicted. There was a great decline in morals, and the consumption of gin and so on started rising very quick. And then out on the frontier, people felt almost like out of the reach of God, out of the reach of civilization. They were in virgin territory, and there just weren't preachers out there. There just wasn't the gospel out there. There just wasn't the old Christianity out there. And you know, very rapidly there was a noticeable decline in American religious beliefs, in habits, and the temperance movement, and then the abolition movement against slavery began. Mm-hmm. And then in the beginning of the 20th century, the sense that something needed to be done about the cities, something needed to be done about our politics, and a great progressive movement came along. Well, partly out of conservative inspiration, partly out of a kind of European inspiration. And so we've had three Great Awakenings which quite changed America, and some scholars argue that we're at the beginnings of a fourth, in the greater attention paid to the family, the sense that we're off track and need to right ourselves, the people very worried about spending and recovering the older tradition of thrift, and you know, that may be. On Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, I'm very hopeful, and on Tuesdays and Thursdays and Saturdays, I get low. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's going to come out too well. And on Sundays, I pray. So, the issue is in the balance, but the possibility is very strong.
Mr. Novak, when you look back in history, and of course you have had a wonderful life of watching the world spin and politics change, but when I was in high school and college, I can vividly remember Democrats like Adlai Stevenson and Hubert Humphrey and John F. Kennedy, and they were to be looked up to and admired, and there wasn't the divisiveness, there wasn't the hatred, there wasn't this division on the aisle and the hate for conservatism in this country. Can we ever restore a value system between the two parties again, do you think?
Well, yes, we can. Look, Reagan cut off that tendency by teaching the Republicans don't speak badly of people on your side. Mm-hmm. We got to go forward together. And then he was terrific as president. He and Tip O'Neill, the head of the House, ardent Democrat, would really go at it. And then afterwards, they'd have a drink and have a cup of coffee, tell one another jokes, and patch it up. And that used to be the great spirit Reagan brought. It can happen again. Mm-hmm. Like God knows we're all getting very, very weary of the partisan intensity. Oh, one other thing I should say, I remember in the old days when, the 50s, 60s, 70s, when people were saying, contrary to Will Rogers, who said, I'm not a Democrat. He said, I don't belong to any organized party. I'm a Democrat. And what he meant, it was a big coalition of opposites, the Bible Belt, Jews and Catholics in the urban cities, Democratic farmers movement in Minnesota and so forth. It was a coalition with people who thought quite the opposite of one another. And people said we should have more ideologically pure parties, where people who think alike will all be on one side. Well, that's where we are now. It doesn't work so well. People lose sympathy. In the old days, our differences forced people to work harder to get a coalition going, and nowadays our ideological homogeneity makes us not want to talk to people on the other side.
Let me ask you this.
The people we go around with don't have the ideas of the people on the other side, don't understand them. On the whole, Republicans, the Democrats tend to think, and I felt this myself in my own life, Democrats tend to think that they're smarter than others, and that the other side is stupid. and worse than that, evil. The other side is evil. We're the good guys. We're when the saints come marching in, that's us.
Mm-hmm.
And on the other side, the Republicans tend to think, well, why don't these people wake up? Don't they know how the world works? How can they be so impractical and live in so many illusions? Well, it's kind of hard to talk across that barrier.
Absolutely. When you look back at the Vietnam era, and of course now that was an era that I'm very familiar with many of my high school and college buddies going over to Vietnam, and you look at the likes of John Kerry. I want to talk about John Kerry and get your viewpoint on this. Here was a man that was not happy with America. He was not happy with Americans' policy in Vietnam, and I have on my desk, as a matter of fact, a couple of memoirs that were written about him and his association with the far left, i.e. Jane Fonda, Hanoi Jane. And then years hence, this man becomes Secretary of State. I find this ridiculous. What are your thoughts?
Well, I'm not a big fan of John Kerry, never have been. I hated what he did in the Vietnam era, even though I was against the war. Well, I started out for it. I thought it had to be done, and thinking of Munich and so on, and I do think our cause was right. On the other hand, it wasn't so wise to open up as big a war 9,000 miles away. I mean, the supply line was immense, and the people were very different, wonderful people, but very different. And we were fighting in a jungle, which took away some of our great strengths, the kind of army we had then. And so I started to turn against the war on those grounds. And but regardless of when I was in favor or when I was against the war, behavior was outrageous. I just couldn't take it. So I'm not a fan of it. Look, it's a country that's very forgiving, and people can go on to other things, and I don't object to that. But I'm not much in favor of him being Secretary of State either, because I think his vision of world politics is not very sound.
Mr. Novak, when you look at presidencies like Jimmy Carter's, and then go to Ronald Reagan, and then go to the Bushes, father and son, and now to Obama, what are your thoughts about all the presidents that you have seen in the different administrations and what they've accomplished or what they haven't accomplished? Where are we now with the Obama administration?
Well, I loved Margaret Thatcher. Margaret Thatcher is someone who befriended me, never expected it, didn't plan on it, didn't whatever. And but then she took me into her friendship. And I love something she said on her very first visit to Washington. Remember, Reagan had her over as the first foreign leader. And she said, she described Jimmy Carter's foreign policy is lose a country, gain a restaurant. And I just could hardly stop laughing at that. And, we saw country after country go more communist under Carter. Good man that he was, but a bit innocent in world politics, it seemed to me.
Mm-hmm.
It seemed to me before he was elected president that was going to be the case. Okay, if you don't have, and then I thought, let's say Bush the second, an awfully bad rap, but I thought he did the truly heroic thing, the truly necessary thing in Iraq. I know the war became very unpopular, and I probably shouldn't say this, but nonetheless it's what I thought, and I still think. If we don't turn the attention of young men in the Middle East to building something creative, to working and inventing and installing regimes of human rights, if we don't lead them in the ways of prosperity and human rights and respect for one another, we're going to have turmoil among the billion Muslims in the world forever. And I thought Bush had a chance in Iraq to make that turn, and in fact, it pretty much worked for a while. I think they've had 3, maybe 4 changes of government, where the government really changes under democracy in a row, which is quite an achievement in this world. And more stuff was written about human rights and democracy in the years since then than in the last 200 years of Muslim history. So I thought something good was started, but American people don't have the patience to carry through. We're not that kind of country. We're not made for war, and we're not made for, conquest and taking responsibility for a long time. It's not our way.
Let me ask you this.
We ended up failing.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought President Bush was just very gutsy and very courageous and withstood all the barbs of unpopularity all the way through it. So there's a guy I really admire, though he's, attacked every day in the press these days.
Absolutely.
On George Bush.
Let me ask you another scenario here, Mr. Novak, before I run out of time. Today, and this is my feeling, more so than ever before, we have another force behind evil and ideology in this country. I think that's really working for the left, and that's Hollywood and what they're perpetrating to the general public in their movies with their so-called stars and starlets, etc. To me, that's another problem that is really trying to take apart and tear apart the fabric of our society more so now than ever before. What are your thoughts about Hollywood?
Well, I think of the history of the 20th century continuing into ours is divided into 3 acts. The first act was, which is better for democracy and human rights? Totalitarianism, Nazism, communism, democracy. And democracy is not a very great way of governing yourself, but it sure beats the alternatives. And it does protect human rights a lot better. So Act 1 was decided in favor of democracy, roughly speaking. Act 2 was, which is the best economy for the poor, socialism or capitalism? And the collapse of socialism and the immense poverty wherever it has been decided that question, ended that act. And now we're discovering that you can't have democracy and you can't have an inventive, dynamic economy unless you have people with certain moral culture, a certain set of virtues, invention, discovery, hard work, organization, sacrifice of the present for the sake of the future. So there's a great moral struggle being fought out. Granted, we have economic freedom. Granted, we have political freedom. How the heck are we going to live? If we live like pigs, do whatever we want, satisfy our pleasures, we're on our road to slavery and serfdom. It's happened over and over again in history. That may be where we're heading. And certainly people like to be titillated. People like to be shocked, and that's what Hollywood is delivering. Thoughtlessly, not taking any care about what they're doing to the fabric of the country.
Mm-hmm.
In World War II, they were much more careful. They really celebrated sacrifice and duty, because that's the only way we were going to survive. That's gone. Now they celebrate pleasures and wildness and decadence. And, if we lose that battle, we lose everything. So it's a serious battle. But we haven't thought about it too much. We were so preoccupied with politics and economics, we forgot about the culture of liberty.
Absolutely.
I call it moral ecology. Only with a certain moral ecology can you have freedom.
Absolutely. Let me ask you about your book, Writing from Left to Right. When people read the book and close the cover and have sat back and digested what you've written, what do you want the general public to take away from the book, Writing from Left to Right?
I hope people enjoy, as I did, the tremendous people I met along the way. I worked for politicians on the left and on the right. I love a lot of them. George McGovern I love. Sarge Schreiber I thought was one of the most saintly men in public life I ever met. Said the rosary every day, often slept on the floor at night in order to keep himself in shape for work in the third world, that is, as he's done in the Peace Corps. And they're just great people. Even when I disagreed, ended up disagreeing with their politics, their policies. So I'd like them to see that, but I'd like to see them, have them look above all at the huge battle of ideas that we all fought through. The one about democracy and dictatorship, the one about socialism and capitalism, and now the one about morals. Granted that we're free, how should we live? What's a man? What's a woman? What's a marriage? These are fundamental questions that affect the happiness of each of us. And really careful thinking is necessary about them, not only for our own personal lives, but for the lives of our children and grandchildren.
Absolutely.
It's not just a many-generation thing. It's not just one generation.
Absolutely. Mr. Novak, where is the book available? I'm sure it's at all major bookstores. Is that right?
Yeah, and patronize your local bookstore. Those are heroic institutions, really necessary for a democracy like ours. But thank God there's also Amazon.com. And, you can get the book in a day or two if you go there. So, my father used to say if somebody admired something he did, he said, may your numbers increase. And that's the way I feel about book sales. May their numbers increase.
There you go. Great author and philosopher, Mr. Michael Novak, with his book, Writing from Left to Right. Thank you, sir. God's blessings to you. And I'm going to get the book, I'll read the book, and then I'll have you back on my program. Thank you for your time this morning.
Look forward to it very much.
Thank you, sir. God bless you very much. Thank you. Nice gentleman, Mr. Michael Novak, and he is a professed liberal, changed, saw the light, and decided to be very conservative in his approach to life. And I am very anxious to get this book. It's called The Political Transformation of Michael Novak, a prominent philosopher that made the move from liberals to being a conservative. And it's called Writing from Left to Right. My goodness, we've got to have a weather forecast here, and the weather this hour is brought to you by Red's Trading Post at 203 5th Avenue South in Twin Falls with our dear friend Ryan Horsley. Don't forget they've got all your guns, they've got all your ammo, they've got all your holsters, they've got all your eye and ear protection, your electronics, your tapes, software, everything that you need to be a great outdoorsman. Red's Trading Post, 203 5th Avenue South in Twin Falls. Here now, Michael Rogers Weather.
Hello, everyone. Michael Rogers from MichaelRogersWeather.com. For today, it's going to be rather quiet. Nice and sunny, 71 for the high, 40 for the overnight low. Then that storm that Seattle got, although there are no tornadoes forecasted when it gets to us, we're going to see that on Wednesday night going into Thursday, coming out on Friday. Have a great day. Enjoy the weather. Feeling what you got.
Thank you, Michael. And, of course, brought to you this hour by Red's Trading Post, 203 5th Avenue South in Twin Falls. You stop in and see the great folks at Red's Trading Post today in historic Old Town Twin Falls. Oh, I got time for a couple of calls. Give me a jingle real quick. I really appreciated that Mr. Novak. He's over 80 years old and still going strong, writing books, a great philosopher, and appreciate the fact that I had him on my show. Don't forget to A Child's World, 1308 Overland Avenue in Burley, and you can go online and shop at A Child's World. All you have to do is go to achildsworldinburley.com. They've got all the Cherokee and the Dickie scrubs. They've got all the shoes. They've got all the accessories. They've got all the toys and the games and the books and the arts and crafts supplies, everything, and all the infant clothing. I mean, it is a family store. Please stop in and enjoy shopping at A Child's World, 1308 Overland Avenue in Burley, and they are one of the co-sponsors of Cassia County School Days, to be heard here every Thursday on Zeb at the Ranch. You know who we haven't talked to today? We have not even had a smidgen of a visit with the lovely Gina. Good morning, Gina.
Good morning, sir.
How are you?
Oh, I'm doing fine, just being all political on the Facebook pages, you know.
You know, we have had, and I want to thank a lot of people. I've got a network of people that help me and work for me across the United States in getting the best people on this program. People that you will hear on all the national programs are right here on my show, and it's not just me lining them up. I mean, I've got a host of people, probably 30 different individuals in different companies and think tanks that work for us, and we're getting the best.
I have to agree, and I really, really found that last gentleman very interesting, Michael Novak.
Yeah, 80 years old and very articulate, very sharp, and writing more books, and was a liberal, saw the light, and became a conservative.
You know, I used to be a little bit more on the liberal spin. I'm not quite conservative. I'm middle of the road. I'm conservative on some things. I believe in what I believe in, so I don't fly any sort of political flag. But, I think that people really need to start taking a hard look at things, doing their research, and cinching up the belt.
But, I talked to him and I mentioned to him my attitude about America and when I grew up is kind of the Saturday Evening Post cover of the family around the turkey dinner at Thanksgiving and sitting in church, the Norman Rockwell approach to America. And quite frankly, there are some that are offended when I say that on the program, the way things were, the way things ought to be. But really, Gina, we were a more cohesive country and had more values, better family values then than we do now.
And you're not going to hear any complaints or disagreement from me on that one, because it's true. Life was a little bit more simpler. We took more pride in the things that we did. America was bustling and hustling, and we were growing. And I don't know what happened.
There was
too many hands in the pot.
Would you agree that I think, my personal opinion, I've only got a few seconds here, we had a sense of achievement and a sense of accomplishment that we don't have now?
Agreed.
Okay. Always enjoyable to visit with you. We're going to be back, and guess who's going to be on next half hour? Dr. History, and I'll take a break and be back in 6. Oh, here we go. Hour number 3, Zeb at the Ranch, and we're brought to you by our major sponsor, your Magic Valley Les Schwab Tire Centers, all 7 locations serving you, and serve they will, along with our friends at Lee's Furniture, Floors and More at 459 Overland in Burley. And again, thanking Brent for one of our gifts for our great big Cow Pies and Coffee Cups drawing, going to be on Thursday. If you haven't signed up for Cow Pies and Coffee Cups, do so. Go to my website, zebbell.com, or call me, and be sure and get your name on the list. Still time before the drawing of our first prize from Lee's Furniture, Floors and More on Thursday. And also our friends at Western Way Services, always at your disposal. Get on the route service today. Call Kelly and the crew at 734-6969. What's happening at the Chadwick Grill? Well, I'll tell you, the Chadwick Sports Grill has great luncheon specials for just $5.95. What? Yep, I'm not kidding. And they've got a senior citizen dinner special Monday through Thursday from 4 to 6 p.m., only $5.95. And today, this is a good one, October 1st, ground round steak with mashed potatoes, veggies, and super salad. Going to love it. You're going to love the atmosphere. You're going to love the food, naturally, at the Chadwick Sports Grill, 139 West Main in Burley. Really good, folks. I told you I spilled the great big glass of water I have here on the studio desk last hour during my interview with Mr. Novak. I thought for a few minutes I was going to have to start swimming the backstroke here. Holy smokes, we had water all over everything. Got rid of the flies, oh by golly, they washed away. Looked like they were making it in the flood for Noah's Ark. Don't forget, Ramsey Heating and Electric can offer rebates on qualified Lennox home comfort systems, whether it's a gas furnace, air conditioner, or a heat pump. You and your family will enjoy the comfort. As a Lennox dealer for over 53 years, they know the climate, they know the equipment, and they at Ramsey's have done the shopping for you. Get a hold of Ramsey Heating and Electric today, 678-0459, where they sell warm winters and cool summers. Ladies and gentlemen, as we stand outside looking at the hills, where only the hills can tell the history of what happened there, hark! Hark, there is a man, even though he be shriveled and not strong of limb and body anymore after hundreds of years of recording history. Here now, Dr. History.
If people ever really saw me in person, they wouldn't recognize me because I actually stand up pretty straight.
Nah, you look like a raisin. You're all wrinkled. What's the matter with you?
It's true. What can I say?
How are you? I'm good, my friend. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing great.
Hey, we missed you last week.
Well, my daughter had a baby up in Coeur d'Alene, and my wife was up there. I went up and helped drive her back. And last Tuesday I was driving. In fact, it was kind of interesting. Driving back down through Montana there, where like the big whole battle occurred. And, you look around and I can just picture some Indian sitting up on a horse up on one of those ridges, or a group of Indians going single file.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just like that country up there.
Yeah, that's funny you say that because going through like Custer's Last Stand, the battleground and everything, you can almost, if you close your eyes and think about it, feel the eeriness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a nice drive down through there.
And then every week when you're on the show, I can close my eyes and I can still feel the eeriness.
Well, that's just some of the stuff I'm telling you. Where do I get in today's story?
All right, buddy, it's all yours.
Okay, well, I'm going to talk about medicine in the Old West a little bit. We've covered this off and on with different things, and we're going to talk about medicine in the mining towns.
Uh-oh.
And in fact, there's a quote here that starts out that from one guy. He said, "I little thought that the first digging I would do in California would be digging a grave." So, in the early 1850s up until the 1900s, these gold and silver, I mean, that was a huge magnet for people to head for the West.
Yep.
And thousands of fortune seekers were buried along the trail or at sea. Some of them went around South America, all the way around, and some of those didn't make it. But of those who arrived at their destination, the death rate still continued to go up. These new arrivals, when they got here, there was as much disease and danger at the gold fields as they'd had on the trip to get there, if not more. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that. But during the first 2 years of the California gold rush, there were 90,000 immigrants that had arrived.
Wow.
And of this number, it was estimated that about 1/5 of them died and were buried within the first 6 months after they got there.
1/5?
1/5. I didn't realize it was that high.
Wow.
In fact, there was a doctor, his name, Dr. Lord was his name. He wrote in his journal in 1849, he said, 28 people were buried day before yesterday. 28. So,
well, what killed them all?
Well, that's what I'm going to get into. The cholera, scurvy, infectious diseases, these settled in and around the mining camp.
Wow.
And, you can imagine, it was crude, it was unsanitary, the living conditions were really an ideal environment for illness. Now, the ships, the wagons, the mule trains, they poured into California, and later, other areas of the West, they brought supplies, livestock, passengers, and disease. In fact, there's a lot of stories about the diseases the white man brought to the Indians, which totally wiped out some tribes.
Let me ask you a quick question right there, and I don't mean to interrupt your story, but when you consider the Indians and their encampments, and then the white man coming in and bringing all the diseases, it makes one think that the Indians were farther advanced hygienically than the white man.
Well, I think they were, and probably partly because, they moved on. And I think the fact that they had places they camped year after year, streams and rivers that they probably tried to keep clean. So they were probably our first environmentalists, maybe. I don't know.
Okay.
But, these towns became congested with people and animals, and no one really understood sanitation or public health as we know it today. And, of course, health regulations were unheard of. The creeks and the springs, the rivers, and these were near the masses of people, and they were contaminated with waste and garbage, and people coughed and sneezed, and respiratory diseases such as flu spread among these people, because they lived in poorly ventilated places.
Oh boy!
In fact, the Yellowstone River at one time was the worst river in the United States as far as pollution. It was absolutely the worst.
Really? The Yellowstone?
Yeah, the Yellowstone,
wow.
Which may surprise people because, clear out here in the West. But if you think about it, that was the way to get rid of stuff. So, an animal died, you just threw it in the river.
Oh, my goodness sakes.
So cows, horses, cats, dogs, whatever, they just threw them in the river. So, but there was a description in a mining camp by Sacramento in the river there. In 1850, this is a quote, it said, "This whole concern is surrounded with filth, bones, rags, chips, sticks, horns, skulls, hair, skin, blood, etc., etc., all in the Sacramento River."
You would have thought, honestly, that somebody had some kind of a conscious thinking that this ain't good.
Yeah. But again, consider that when they moved into an area, they were there after the gold. And so it was, let's get going on digging for gold, and doesn't matter what the living conditions are like.
Sounds to me like only the tough survived.
Yeah, really. Now, water, of course, was impure. Food was poorly preserved. And so, dysentery and bad diets resulted in nutritional deficiency and especially scurvy. And now it's estimated that about 10,000 men actually died of scurvy in the California gold rush. and half of them in the winters of 1848 and 1849. And actually, a lot of people think of cholera as being the big one.
Yeah.
But at this point, the scurvy victims outnumbered those of cholera. In fact, there's one group of miners who seldom suffered from scurvy, and these were the Chinese.
Really?
Yeah, they'd learned how to plant vegetables in the soil wherever they were. They would plant vegetables, and the white people were pretty amazed that the Chinese ate green gourds, green pumpkins, and green squash. But they were getting vitamin C from this diet.
Oh, my goodness sakes. So basically the white man...
Camps, they rose, they fell according to the mineral supply, so they tended to be just kind of a hectic place. Like I say, they'd go in maybe only for a few months, and then everybody was gone.
I see.
Then they'd move on to the next big place. But because the miners never knew how long they would stay, they usually lived in tents or shanties or makeshift shacks or worse, and those who failed to find or found and lost their fortune in the diggings, a lot of times they slept wherever they could. And sometimes it was on the floors of the drafty buildings or the cold ground, or some miners were called the sawdust gang because they slept in the sawdust on the floors of the bars.
Oh, my goodness. Wow.
So they were called the sawdust gang. But obviously in these primitive and unclean conditions, infections would spread rapidly. I mean, again, what you just mentioned, survivors, they had a great resistance and probably some good luck to be able to survive all this.
I just can't imagine living in those conditions. And I'll go back to what I said a minute ago. I can't imagine that somebody would have said, gee, the water's not right. Golly, you've got dead animals, you're drinking the water. Or you can't live like this because it's not good for your health. Certainly somebody had to think about that.
Well, maybe a few of them did. But again, it was get in, get your gold, and get out as quick as you could.
Okay.
This might be a good spot for a break, Zeb, if you want to take it.
Yeah, we don't have the sponsor originally that we had on right now. They'll be coming back in a couple of weeks, but I do thank you for that because I want to mention Sportsman's Warehouse. I know that Dr. History is an outdoorsman, and he knows that Sportsman's Warehouse is the place to go at 1940 Bridgeview Boulevard in Twin Falls. Friendly folks, quality gear, knowledge, and a down-home attitude. They've got everything you need for the great outdoors. Quality people with quality gear for all your hunting, fishing, archery, camping, boating, ATVs, everything. Get in there to Sportsman's Warehouse, 1940 Bridgeview Boulevard in Twin Falls. And now, back to Dr. History.
Well, besides the disease in the mining camps, this was a pretty violent culture. I mean, there was dangerous working conditions. We've talked before, they tended to be a little excessive in their drinking, and it was a pretty depressing environment. Mm-hmm. And this meant further deaths from not just murder and accidents, but suicide. In fact, one doctor's wife in California wrote, in the space of 24 days, we have had several murders, accidents, bloody deaths, whippings, a hanging, and an attempt at suicide and a fatal duel.
Wow.
24 days. So they didn't lack for excitement, I guess.
How would you support that with your Chamber of Commerce?
Right. Come to our town. We've got excitement. But, the camps, they had an atmosphere of desperation. And, of course, there wasn't much law. And according to one estimate, during the first 5 years of the gold rush, there were 4,200 murders and 1,400 suicides.
Oh,
and, of course, accidents were also common and added to the death toll. But I've talked before about the Klondike. Mm-hmm. Now, this was absolutely had to be the most desperate and depressing area for miners. I mean, the cold, and they had to haul 2,000 pounds of gear up over Dawson, from up over the Chilkoot Trail, the Golden Staircase.
Yeah.
Some of them would just sit down and just basically put a bullet through their head.
Yeah, the despair. I've read a couple of books about that since you were on the program talking about that. And literally they would sit down and go, I can't make it anymore. I can't go back. I'm at a point of no return. Bang.
Yeah. And, at least down here, and, at least you knew the summer was coming and one thing and another. But the Klondike, that had to be, to me, one of the worst as far as depression and hard work.
Did they ever realize before, the story I was reading was about a guy in Missouri that took off and went up there. Do you think they had no information as to how rough and rugged it was?
I don't think they really did, because so many of them got up there and had no idea what they were getting into.
Wow.
So, But, I talked about accidents and that were related to the work itself. Now, in the mine shafts, there were the dangers of cave-ins, falling rock, dynamite explosions, and actually scalding water and fires. And in the winter, of course, exposure to bitter cold that froze their feet to their hands. And one thing another, accidents happened in camp, where, alcohol was pretty much a daily thing consumed by the miners. And that led to all kinds of accidents. For example, the rich silver deposits of the Comstock mines in Nevada, this came with actually another threat. The mines were built on top of a hydrothermal region.
Ooh.
So the miners, in addition to all the other hazards of their profession, they were exposed to superheated water. I hadn't realized this, but the heat and the steam would sometimes scald these guys, and poorly ventilated workplaces led to lung diseases and, some of these things they didn't know about, obviously, until later. These guys became permanently disabled, and then the other thing to make worse, I told you I was going to get to you, at the Comstock mines, the miners had no toilet facilities and literally worked in a cesspool. I mean...
Well, you've done a lot for our sponsorship for our lunches.
Well, I thought I'd throw that in.
Yeah, I'm so glad you did.
Anyway, as more mineral wealth was discovered, these mining communities sprang up in nearly every state in the West, and in virtually every one of them, health hazards were similar. Dangerous, filthy work conditions, alcoholism, violence, malnutrition. Colorado miners suffered from something a little different from others, and this was high altitude. If you read anything about conquering Mount Everest, they talk about high-altitude diseases of lightheadedness, headaches, pneumonia, things like this. So, some of the areas, like I mentioned, the Klondike, the Comstock, and over in Colorado, they had other things that would get them as well. But
you talk about these miners and working literally like in, I hate to keep saying it, a cesspool. I'm assuming they probably wore the same clothes day after day after day, and the disease, the skin problems, oh, man alive. I'm so glad you brought this up.
Well, and I'm not even getting into the nitty-gritty of some of this stuff.
Oh.
I mean, you can talk about tuberculosis. I mean, some people came west that had tuberculosis, hoping that the dry, cold mountain air would help with their tuberculosis. They also referred to as consumption, which is basically an untreatable lung disease.
Yeah, like Doc Holliday.
Yeah, right, yeah. And he did come west hoping to get cured of that.
Do you remember the home state he was from?
Oh, boy.
Georgia. Georgia.
Where was it?
He was a Georgia boy.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
All right. Now, also, women and children, there weren't very many in the mining towns, and in time, the families began to come and settle in and around the more permanent camps. And as they did, then living conditions did improve. But childhood diseases also crept in. I mean, diphtheria, whooping cough, measles, scarlet fever, and sometimes these were epidemic in some of these communities. And they brought, of course, sickness and death to children and sometimes adults as well, because, again, they didn't understand the disease process. And so to quarantine people, eventually they learned, that they had to quarantine people or families that had the diseases.
Oh, but these miners, I mean, my goodness, they'd go to town on Saturday night, and I can't even imagine how many people were affected or infected by them.
Exactly. I mean, the store people, even the medical doctors, and one thing or another, they were treating these guys, and how many of them actually contracted the disease.
Oh my goodness!
But eventually the settlers began to actually want better medical treatment, and some mining towns actually built hospitals, and these hospitals were actually among the first non-military medical facilities on the frontier.
But now, medicine-wise, on the frontier with the hospitals, I mean, medicine and doctors and what to do and what not to do, that really wasn't known that well.
Well, it really wasn't. And, in fact, a lot of the doctors, well, not a lot, but some of them, they came out west, they wanted the gold too. And some of them, when they got here after arriving in the gold camps, they found they could make more money by attending to the sick than prospecting. So, in fact, an ounce of gold, which might take all day or longer to dig, was worth about $16, and that was what many doctors charged for a house call. So, you know, they could make more money doctoring than they could digging for gold. And in fact, one discouraged 49er complained. He said, and I'm going to quote him, he says, "Diarrhea, piles, gravel, chills, fever, and scurvy begin to make their appearance, and I ain't well myself."
Oh, my.
He said, "There's been 3 doctors, or things they call doctors, working at me for some time, have now paid out all my gold to the doctors, and they leave me worse in health." And another miner wrote, "The doctors charge pretty well. They charge for pills as if they were diamonds, and bleed a man of an ounce of gold and an ounce of blood at the same time."
Oh, my goodness sakes. You know, I read someplace, Doc, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, you probably know, but there was some western town, and I can't remember if it was in Colorado or some state like California, might have been California, where an entire town was wiped out in a matter of like 3 days because of cholera.
You know, very possible.
Yeah.
Some of these diseases spread so fast. And the other thing, like I mentioned, malnutrition, your immune system is not very good. And so, and with the hard labor, you know, you have no strength to fight these things. And so children especially, but adults as well. I mean, it could hit and wipe out people in a hurry.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But, you know, the doctors, like the other fortune seekers, they were always ready to move on to the latest hot spot. So a lot of these mining town transient type doctors, you know, along with the lawyers, the merchants, the gamblers, and et cetera, they would basically, they'd come to mine the miners out of their hard-earned gold dust. And but sometimes the hustle worked both ways. One doctor got to Deadwood, Dakota Territory, and he treated a miner's badly shot up arm, and he was paid with a sack of gold dust. And later I found out it was not real gold. It was just fake. And so after that, he always carried a bottle to test testing acid with him to make sure he was getting the real deal.
I don't think we appreciate, and we're out of time, but I don't think we appreciate how rough, how dangerous, how absolutely, I'll use this word, insane a person had to be to expose themselves to those kind of elements.
Exactly right. And again, the people that probably did the best were those that sold the goods and took care of the miners.
Yeah, but really, they were subjecting themselves to catching whatever they had.
Yeah.
Wow.
Right.
Wow.
So, you know, medicine in the Old West is kind of a fascinating story. I've got a big, thick book here in front of me that I've told quite a few stories out of, and, you know, thank goodness the medical profession has come a long ways, and it's amazing now what we have compared to back then.
Yeah, but you go back to the 1860s, of which an area, you talk to the 49ers in California, 1849, et cetera, and come forward. We're not talking that long a period of time to where it is today.
You know, we're really not, considering, you know, the thousands of years that we've been here.
Yep.
You know, really, in the last 150 years, things have come a long way, and in the last 50 years, considerably farther.
Yeah, but now we're on a downhill slide with Obamacare.
Oh, don't get me started.
Listen, I really appreciate everything you do on this program segment. Thank you very much, Dr. History. It's a blessing to have you back on the program, and we'll look forward to next week. And I'm sure, as I always say, you have the topic already. And what will it be?
You know, I'm pretty sure it's going to be about the Old West.
Okay.
That's about as close as I can get.
Well, listen, God bless you, man. Thanks so much.
Okay, you have a good day.
Appreciate it. Love that guy. Dr. Ken Turner, and, of course, Dr. History. Appreciate it. Hey, when you need a plumber, and all of us need a plumber a time or two or 3 or 4, well, I'll guarantee I know the best plumber to call, and that's Harris Plumbing NG, for all your plumbing service needs. That is the truth. I tell you what, I have a lot of faith in this young man, Nathan Harris, and his business is absolutely absolutely second to none. One call does it all, 431-8633, specializing in water line replacement, drain cleaning, drips, leaks, clogs, whatever you have, call him. They've worked for us and done a fantastic job. 24/7, Nathan serving you. Harris Plumbing NG, 431-8633. Going to take a break. Send it back over to the main studios. We'll be back. And we have coming up next hour, Steve Vogel. And you're going to love the topic because it's one of the best books I've ever read, I should say, and one of the best books ever written, Through the Perilous Fight. A wonderful book. Stand by for that.
And now back to Zeb at the Ranch on AM 1230 KBAR. To reach Zeb, call 436-2244 or toll free 1-866-927-4587. And now, here is Zeb Bell.
Oh, thank you much. Drift Inn, 545 F Street in Rupert. Have you eaten at the Drift Inn? Well, you just better treat yourself and your lovely and get on over there, because don't forget, on Thursday evenings you can enjoy a home-cooked meal by Chef Dave Haley, and that starts at 5 p.m. all the way to closing. It's just a meal like Mom used to make. You're going to love it, and they also have live music. And don't forget luncheon specials, 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Saturday. Nice people, great food. Underline the great food at the Drift Inn, 545 F Street in Rupert. Really good place to go. Ladies and gentlemen, as you know on this program, we have anybody and everybody on this show, ranging from national guests that you'll see on Hannity and on O'Reilly, and we're the only show in the state that puts forth that kind of an effort to get those people on the air. And I was sent some information about a book that was written called Through the Perilous Fight, and I wanted to get the author on the program, and we did about 2 months ago, Mr. Steve Vogel, and he is quite an author. He's also the author of the book called The Pentagon. Well, I read the book, and I was in absolute awe as to how he put this whole thing together regarding our national anthem, Francis Scott Key, and the Battle of 1812. And I had to have him back on the program because I wanted to tell him in person, Steve, that's the best book that I have read in a long, long time. Kudos to you.
Hey, thanks very much, Seb. I appreciate that.
I sat there and I think I've got so many questions about how you intertwined all the information for this book. Basically, and tell me if I'm wrong, this is kind of the story as to how our national anthem came into being, but I mean, how in the world did you do all the research on the different personalities involved, both on the British side and on the American side, and weave that together? To me, it would have drove me nuts after the first 24 hours.
Yeah, you know, the thing is, the characters that I was writing about, to me, were so interesting and compelling that I completely, got into trying to tell their story and finding the letters and documents that, more or less try to bring them alive. I think it was just, partly just because it's such a great yarn to begin with. I just felt like I was doing the easy part in telling the story because they had done all the hard part.
Yeah, but you're not giving yourself enough credit there, Steve. You're being very humble. I've read a lot of books, but I've never seen any book that I've read in my lifetime that intertwined the what they said, how their feelings were, what happened, because you didn't have that much to work with as far as history and documentation, did you?
Well, it's amazing how much we're still able to find out there, and I appreciate your comments. That's very, very kind to you. But a lot of letters and diaries are still being found, even from this period 200 years ago. And I did some research in both in England and Northern Ireland, as well as all around the United States in the Washington, Maryland, Virginia area, going through the various archives, and new letters were being found, and new diaries, that sort of thing, and that enables us to kind of tell the story from the viewpoint and the words of those who were living through it.
You really did some research about Francis Scott Key. I learned more about the War of 1812, more about the personalities involved in the war, and more about the war itself from your book than I ever did in history in college.
Yeah, Francis Scott Key, to me, is just amazing. That's a name that, virtually everybody in the country knows. Okay, Francis Scott Key. And they know he wrote the national anthem. But, that's about it. Nobody really quite knows how he ended up being in this position to write this song. It's almost as if he was, beamed down from the Starship Enterprise and just happened to be there in Baltimore Harbor to witness this bombardment. So, one of the things that I was trying to do was tell a little bit of the story behind him, who he was, his own, conflicted feelings about the war. He was a big opponent of the United States war with Great Britain. Like a lot of Americans of the day, it was a very divided country. And but yet, once the British are attacking his homeland, so to speak, in Washington and Maryland and Baltimore, he feels very differently, and he ends up trying to defend Washington, and then ends up being a witness to the attack on Baltimore.
Absolutely. Steve, the one thing I noticed about the book and about the war that I hadn't perceived before in high school or college history courses is that I had the feeling, and I'm sure I'd like you to elaborate on this, that this war was a very loose-jointed war. I got the impression that over here they're still in the fields farming, and over here they were still sitting on the porch maybe smoking an old pipe, and over here there might be a battle going on. It seemed like it was a very loose-jointed war. Is that right?
In a lot of ways, it was, particularly initially. And one of the observations that a British historian who was in America at the time, he would later write that until British Admiral George Cockburn arrived on the scene, a lot of people in the Chesapeake region in Washington would only have known about this war through hearsay. The war had not hit home at that point. It was being fought largely on the Canadian frontier and some open ship battles at sea. But Admiral Cockburn, who's, as you know, is a major part of this book, arrives in America in the spring of 1813, 200 years ago, and he launches this reign of terror. Basically, that was meant to bring the price of this war home to the American people, and in particular, around the heartland, what was then, the geographic center of the country, the Washington region, the Chesapeake, which was also the economic heartland of the country.
Steve, what do you think, your own personal observation, as you look through the historical records and you got all this information to compile for this book, Through the Perilous Fight? How close were we, in your opinion? I know you talk about it at the end of the book, but how close were we to losing, basically, America as for what it stood for on our Constitution?
I think we were a lot closer than is commonly understood today. I think, we kind of go over this story as a quick blip in our history, kind of moving on along the way to the Civil War. And we need to remember that, the country was at this point one generation removed from the Revolution. We're still a very young country. And we had declared war on what was then really one of the greatest powers on earth. And that war had gone pretty badly for us for the first 2 years. And by 1814, when the British had wrapped up Napoleon for the first time, they were free to send more troops over here to take care of this festering war in North America. And particularly after Washington is captured and burned, as I write in the book, I mean, this was one of the most destitute moments in American history. The country was absolutely broke. The Treasury had no money left. The country was very divided. Our capital was in flames. The U.S. forces that had defended the city were in disarray. The president and his cabinet had fled the city. I mean, it's hard to imagine a more destitute moment in American history. And, when the British launched their attack on Baltimore 3 weeks later, we are down for the count. If Baltimore falls, Baltimore is the third largest city in America, hugely important port big center of support for the war. Also, center of privateering, which this was a large part of American defenses depended on these private ships going out and attacking British ships at sea. If Baltimore falls, we're not at all sure that the country is going to survive. Certainly, Francis Scott Key wasn't at all sure, and that's what he is writing about. That's what he's asking in that first verse that he writes over the course of that bombardment.
Absolutely. Steve, were you shocked when you did your research on this book and all the historical content and value that you had to study? Were you shocked that the British, simply put, from a person that doesn't have a tenth of your ability, but were you shocked that the British, they literally shot themselves in the foot, and they could have very easily taken over Baltimore, Fort McHenry, Washington, every other port they wanted to take over, but they didn't seem to do it. They didn't seem to put forth the best effort.
There was the British were having some problems after they captured Washington so easily. Admiral Coburn, who I mentioned earlier, was quite eager to launch an immediate attack on Baltimore, and he and others in the expedition were saying, "Let's do it now. They won't have time to regroup. The shock after the collapse of Washington gives us a chance and to do this." The admiral who was overall in charge of the expedition, Coburn's superior, was hesitant, and for a few different reasons. One being he was fearful of the season, the time of year it was. The late summer British troops had been come down with a lot of diseases, malaria and typhoid, and he wanted to get out of this hot zone before his troops got sick. He was also very interested in preserving his force for an eventual attack on New Orleans, which was really a critical British target. So he was kind of ambivalent, and he kind of did the worst of things. Instead of deciding, okay, we're either going to attack Baltimore right now and strike while the iron's hot, or we're just going to pull out and save up for New Orleans. He waited essentially more than 2 weeks, and then changed his mind. And that extra time that had been given for the Americans in Baltimore, the Maryland militia, the commanders there to bolster their defenses for militia from across Maryland, Virginia, the district, from Pennsylvania, to gather in Baltimore to man these lines, and also to fortify the harbor, around Fort McHenry, to sink ships that would keep the British warships from sailing too close. All these defenses were put up, and even more important, it gave morale a time to boost up. People were really on the verge of capitulation after the fall of Washington. Some of the same troops that are defending Baltimore were the same ones who had been scattered in Washington. So they were, they knew what the British were like. They knew what an impressive force they were, and this time they were able to stand and fight.
And one thing you really brought out, I think, so well in the book was James Madison, our president, his wife Dolly, their personalities, and a completely disjointed and fragmented cabinet, and they didn't seem to know Khmer from Sikkim, did they?
No, yeah, the cabinet was very disjointed, and the Secretary of War, John Armstrong, never believed that Washington would really be a target, and that was one of the reasons the British were able to capture it so easily. He ignored signs and warnings that the British would in fact attack the capital and try to capture it. And he didn't give the militia troops the backing they needed, the equipment, and the force that were requested. And fortunately for the United States, he was more or less pushed out of the picture after the debacle at Washington. And James Monroe, who hadn't necessarily performed that well as Secretary of State, but at the same time, he is much more capable in that job than as Secretary of War than Armstrong had been. But one of the smartest things that Monroe and Madison do at this point is they pretty much give the commanders in Baltimore a free rein, carte blanche, to man the defenses as they see fit. And they have some very expert U.S. Navy officers who are among the defenders there, and that makes a huge difference. People like John Rogers, Oliver Hazard Perry, David Porter, these were legendary names, and they made a huge difference in the morale and the defenses of Baltimore.
Let me talk a little bit before we run out of time here about Fort McHenry and that battle. In your research and study of this issue of the War of 1812, how dangerous and how absolutely desolate was the hope on the attack on Fort McHenry? What did other people think that it was going to fall? They knew it was going to fall, but yet it managed to make it through the night. What happened there that really brought forth that effort for Fort McHenry to stay and stand tall during that battle?
Well, the British had assembled a very formidable siege, floating artillery. They had 5 of their bomb ships. Now, to put that in perspective, there were only 8 of these bomb ships in the entire Royal Navy of more than 1,000 ships. And so you had 5 of the most powerful, floating batteries on Earth sitting there, and they were anchored essentially 2 miles off Fort McHenry, along with other, ships that fire rockets and other ships with guns. These bomb ships were firing, 10-inch and 13-inch mortars that could fly, 2 miles plus and just do an enormous amount of damage. And Fort McHenry, the guns there could not match that range. They had their maximum range was 1.5 miles. So the British ships could just sit there 2 miles out and pummel the fort. But, a lot of things happened, and Francis Scott Key has a, front seat for all this. And, part of it is this ferocious storm that's blowing. The British were firing bombs that had fuses, and this drenching rain is extinguishing some of the bombs. It also, all the wind and churning of the waters is making it difficult for the British to aim. The American commanders at Fort McHenry had very wisely spread the garrison around, and including after a near miss on the magazine, they spread the powder that was in all the kegs of powder around, so that there couldn't be a single catastrophic hit. More than a little bit of good luck was involved. And then the other thing that was so critical was that the Americans had sunk these old ships in the water that prevented the British from going around Fort McHenry, because they couldn't sail through because these ships were there with anchors wrapped around their masts, and the British couldn't get through without getting destroyed themselves. So all these taken together allowed the fort to survive this assault that Francis Scott Key witnesses, despite some 2,000 bombs and rockets being flung at that fort. They survived the night.
My goodness. Okay, now this book, Through the Perilous Fight, it is absolutely a must-read. Steve, how did the book do so far, and what's your next project?
It's doing real well. I was just at the National Book Festival in Washington last weekend, and there's a lot of enthusiasm for people hearing this story, and doing some other speaking engagements. Actually, I'm going to Ireland in a couple of weeks, in Northern Ireland, where General Ross, who led the attack on the United States, on the Capitol, there's a conference about him, so there's some interest overseas as well. And of course, next year is really the big event. That's the 200th anniversary of the creation of the Star Spangled Banner and the national anthem, September of 1814. And there are a lot of preparations underway for a very major and memorable bicentennial event next year at Fort McHenry. So looking forward to that, and having more people learn a bit about this piece of American history.
No, I tell you what, you're the man, and I mean that in all respect. That book held me mesmerized, and I think it's one of the best ever that I've read, Through the Perilous Fight with Steve Vogel, and it's all about the War of 1812 and America's survival to be what it is today. Steve, God's blessings to you, and no matter what you write in the future, come back on the program, okay?
I sure will. I appreciate that. Likewise, Ed.
All right, sir. Thank you so much. Mr. Steve Vogel, author of Through the Perilous Fight. And I got to tell you, folks, I have a copy of it right here in my hand. And once you start reading it, you will not put it down. It's a book. Yes, it's a history book. Yes, it's about the War of 1812. Boredom never even entered my mind. I absolutely loved every page of that book, especially when he gets into the epilogue section and he starts talking about the various personalities and what happened to them after the War of 1812. It is excellent. Holy moly, we've got to have a weather forecast here by Michael Rogers, and it's sponsored this hour by our friends with Lennox. Home comfort systems, gas furnaces, air conditioners, and heat pumps. All of that through our friends at Ramsey Heating and Electric at 2600 Overland Avenue in Burley, 678-0459. Here's Michael Rogers Weather.
Hello, everyone. Michael Rogers from MichaelRogersWeather.com. For today, it's going to be rather quiet. Nice and sunny, 71 for the high, 40 for the overnight low. Then that storm that Seattle got, although there are no tornadoes forecasted when it gets to us, we're going to see that on Wednesday night going into Thursday, coming out on Friday. Have a great day. Enjoy the weather. Taylor, what do you got?
There you go, Michael. Thank you very much. Brought to you this hour by Lennox Home Comfort Systems through our friends at Ramsey Heating and Electric at 2600 Overland Avenue in Burley. You know, we need to know a lot more about our past so we don't make the same mistakes in the future. And when you read that book, Through the Perilous Fight, and you start to think about James Madison and the cabinet being so disjointed, and they were arguing, and they couldn't get along about this and that, and the party politics and everything, brings you almost right up to today. Excellent book. Please go to the newsstand, the bookstores, and buy a copy of that book, and I know you won't be able to put it down. Don't forget our friends at your Magic Valley, Les Schwab Tire Centers. Oh, boy, all 7 locations serving you. Big tire sale going on right now. Big tire sale. You better believe it. Now's the time to get those tires you need, all your snow tires, everything. Well, they've got light truck and SUV tires, the Wildcat AT2 on sale now. And for your cars, they've got the passenger car tire, the Ultra Z900. And every kind of tire for all your driving needs, all the different tread designs, etc. They're all there. And don't forget, too, you want to dress up that four-wheel wonder? They've got the custom fancy wheels on sale, too. And the batteries. And they've got the best in front-end alignments, shocks, and struts, and the best in brake service. I guarantee you. Stop in and see Dave on Blue Lakes and Twin, Mike and Buell, Mike and Jerome, the Twist family in Paul, Lane and Rupert, John on Poline in Twin Falls, and Randy, my old buddy, on Overland in Burley. Your Magic Valley, Les Schwab Tire Centers. Let's see what we've got cooking for tomorrow on the program. We have Doug Johnson from Colorado. We have our first Scows Carcraft Center. We're going to be having those on with Jeff Poole. That's going to be interesting. And we think we have Attorney Grant Gerber coming on the air talking about saving our public lands through the states and not through the federal government. So we think we've got those people lined up for tomorrow on the program. So a lot more good people coming on. Let's see what Gina's got cooking over there. Anything going on that I need to know about today?
The place hasn't burnt down. We're still on the air, so everything's A-okay.
In other words, your life is good.
Yes, pretty much. Yes.
It's really a nice day today.
It is a nice day today, much better than it was yesterday, and so I'm hoping that I can get some more wrapping up the garden stuff done.
Are you into history?
Love history.
Well, see, now you've got to get that book. You will be fascinated how that man, Steve Vogel, intertwined all the personalities of both the British and the American side.
I will definitely have to get that book.
I'm telling you, Gina, you won't put it down. It's one of the most fascinating stories I've ever read in my life. And General Coburn that he talked about, or Admiral Coburn, and Admiral Cochrane and the rest of them, and especially a guy by the name of Admiral Ross. There was a bullheaded guy that absolutely, he caused a lot of the problems as to why the British actually had that defeat. Not only in Baltimore, but also down at New Orleans. Interesting. Very interesting.
It's very interesting stuff. So, yeah, I do love history, so I'm definitely going to have to read that one.
Well, I'm going to play hooky for this afternoon and go outside and enjoy a little bit of great weather.
Will you have fun with doing that?
I'm going to. I'm going to treat myself.
No running the lawnmower? Are you done lawn mowing for the year?
No, we've got to go out and give it a haircut one more time at least. And I love my lawnmower. If I keep it out of the canal and upright, I love my lawnmower.
Does it love you?
Yeah, it runs good after we've had it fixed 73 times for minor mishaps. And Deanna's collected all the pumpkins. I got to tell you about her pumpkins real quick.
Oh, yes.
She went in that maze of tangled underbrush that should be in Vietnam, and she found 23 pumpkins in there.
Wow, I think I only got 6.
And a couple of zucchinis that resembled bombs that you attach to airplanes.
I have a couple of those.
Oh, my.
I was going to drop by your house and drop off a couple of zucchinis, but I figured you didn't need them. But I do have one big old butternut squash that I need to deliver to you.
Oh, my. She will love that. Well, listen, I want to thank you for all your effort getting everybody on the air. God bless you.
Well,
and we'll be back in the saddle tomorrow morning at 8:06. Zeb at the Ranch right here on K-Bar, and then also streaming live all over the world on ZebBell.com. Be sure and get your names in for the drawing on Zeb Bell's Count Buys and Coffee Cups. Don't forget to do that. And don't forget, we'll be back here tomorrow. The way things were, the way things ought to be. Have a good day.